Good evening. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Could we all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
President Bertoni.
Here.
Director Blust.
Here.
Vice President Britton.
Here.
Director Grab.
Here.
Director Gibson.
Here.
Director Houghton.
Here.
Director Crane.
Here.
Director McNeil.
Present.
Director Wisdom.
Here. It's now time for public input on action items. The Downingtown Board of Directors encourages public comment from its citizens. Each community member may speak for a period of no longer than 5 minutes. Please understand this is not a time for dialogue with the board. Rather, the board will listen to all comments and consider them in further deliberations. Our individual email addresses are on the website if you'd like to contact your individual board representative. We ask that you please direct complaints of a personnel nature regarding an individual employee directly to the superintendent. Good evening. Could you state your name and township, please?
My name is Kyle, last name is Degg, and I'm in Euclid Township. Am I ready to proceed? Mm-hmm. Okay, great. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to go ahead and speak, but just to make sure that we have the sake of time there, that we get right to the point. I moved my family here to this particular area specifically to be able to go to Downingtown Area School District. It's ranked high in the state, and as we found out, that's largely attributable to all the teachers that have been teaching at Euclid Township. My family actually consists of 5 children in the Downingtown Area School District, of which the youngest is 4 and the oldest is 12. And we've been able to go through so many different grades at Euclid Township and then into the 6th grade center and then now into LMS that there's far too many teachers for me to be able to personally acknowledge. I'd have to acknowledge at least 1 per child per grade, and but really it's just been an amazing school district to be able to be a part of. It is time, though, however, for these kiddos to be back in school full-time, 5 days a week. There was a study in Wisconsin that was done, and as a father of 5 and a doctor of pharmacy, along with my wife, a mother of 5, and a pediatric nurse, both of which have over a decade of experience in healthcare, we're most interested in evidence-based facts. And that being said, you might be likely familiar with that study that was done in Wisconsin from August 31st to November 29th of 2020. I know that my wife and I are. The study followed 17 different Wisconsin schools where mask wearing was high and normal mitigation strategies were in place. And I want to be clear that whenever they did these mitigation strategies, one of the strategies that they did not institute was a minimum of social distancing. They had normal mask wearing. 92% of the people that were a part of this school district that did a good job wearing masks. And the only time that they had any mandatory mask wearing outside was when they were within 6 feet of another person. The largest thing that they did was actually using cohort groups where students were having minimal exposure to other students. Among 191 cases of COVID that were identified in students and staff members, only 7 were linked to in-school spread. That's 3.7%. This was during a period of time where widespread transmission was being observed in the community, and it was ultimately found that only 1 in 20 cases among the students was linked to in-school transmission. No infections, however, among staff members occurred that were found to have been acquired at the actual school. This was in a school district where only 12.4% of the children were attending virtually. That's about 1 in 8. According to an article in Pediatrics, a study called Epidemiology of COVID-19 Among Children in China by Dong, Mo, and Hu, and others, children might actually be more likely to be asymptomatic carriers of COVID-19. And we know from another study that was in the Journal of American Medical Association called a systematic review and meta-analysis of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, that an asymptomatic attack rate existed at 0.7% within households, and a lower rate of transmission occurs from children than from adults. So what we're ultimately seeing here is essentially because kids tend to not show symptoms, they tend to be asymptomatic, and those without symptoms don't spread the disease by the second study I mentioned. Kids don't get sick with COVID, or excuse me, kids don't get kids sick with COVID. And we know from the study in Wisconsin that kids actually don't typically get faculty sick from COVID. And I want to be very clear here that when we're talking about here are completely asymptomatic individuals. Those with a viral infection, but without symptoms versus those who are what we call pre-symptomatic and ultimately do develop symptoms. A lot of people are worried that there are these silent spreaders that are out there. Children aren't silent spreaders because they typically are asymptomatic. You have to be symptomatic in order to be able to spread the disease. Thank you. Ultimately, I just ask that the school board read those articles. We bring the kids back to school full-time, 5 days a week. Enough time's been given to be able to plan this out, especially when multiple states and multiple schools in the area have already taken those steps and done so successfully. Thanks so much for my time. I appreciate it, and looking forward to a vote that sends the kids back to school.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is John Bassan. I am a West Bradford Township resident, right across the street, and I've been living in West Bradford for 15 years. I have two sons that have gone through Downingtown Area School District. My wife and I moved here from Delaware County to have my sons attend this highly rated school district. We came out here not knowing anything about this area, except that it had a great school district and, well, Victory Brewing, but that's not for tonight. We came here looking for the best for our boys. Now, last year, my oldest graduated Downingtown West, and my youngest is attending the STEM Academy as a sophomore. Like all the students at Downingtown Area School District, they've lost a year of in-person schooling. I understand the virus made it a necessity for everyone to do their studies from home while this virus ran amok. This had to happen, and it is nothing anyone here can deny. It had to happen. My oldest son, Johnny, lost a third of his senior year, his prom, sports, and an actual graduation. It had to happen. We needed to slow down the transmission of COVID. Then September came, where the decision was to keep the hybrid model in place. Again, I understand this had to happen. Transmission rates were high, and we needed to slow down the virus. We are now 1 year away from that initial lockdown. And it's actually 1 year today that we had our first death due to COVID. Transmission rates in Chester County and Downingtown School District's townships and boroughs are below the rate set by the CDC, where it is now not a threat. It's time to send our children back to a full 5-day schedule. No half days, full 5 days. In school. For those who want the virtual, we have that. It's called the Cyber Academy. And you have that option. Take advantage of that and let those of us who want our kids going back to school, in school, do that. I'm watching my son struggle with his schoolwork as the options that in-school offer are just not available. His teachers are doing their best, and God, I love all of our teachers because they are the glue that's keeping these kids together right now. Not the school district, the teachers are. But I'm also seeing him struggle and then his fellow classmates. There are times that my son, who is the happiest go-lucky kid on the planet, is just suffering from loneliness and depression. He hasn't been the same. As parents, we're struggling too. Luckily, I'm able to work from home most days, and I'm there for my son to help him the best I can. But I'm not a teacher. Most of all, with him at the STEM Academy, I have no idea how to help him with most of his subjects. None. That's why we hire and pay, very well by the way, the fantastic school teachers and administrators here with our schools. We've been doing our best to help our kids, but having to juggle with our employment duties, housework, and teaching our kids is taking a toll on us too. We need our kids back in school full-time, 5 days a week. I'm going to say it 1,000 times in 5 minutes. There is no reason to have hybrid for those who want their kids to go back. There is no reason we need half days and school from home days. If you want the cyber option, again, go for it. Use that option, but don't force your opinions on us who want our kids back in the building. It's time. It's time they went back. The schools have been doing a great job of keeping them clean, setting up the social distancing, and they are ready. They are ready to host our kids to go back. I know firsthand it's not just my son. I'm a scout leader for Troop 52 and Troop 19, which meets down in Marshallton. I see how different they are now. They're quiet. Yes, teenagers are quiet. Who would have thought that? They're listless, and the happy teenage energy is gone. When they get together, it's like they're released from prison. They are happy and glad they don't have to sit in another Zoom meeting. They talk, joke, work together, and are generally just glad to see a person other than their family. All right, so I'm here to say to you it's time. It's time to get our kids back in the building. There's an election coming up, and we're watching who votes for in-school and hybrid. And if you are representatives vote without taking into consideration our wants and needs, you will be replaced. Remember that you were put in office to do... Okay, thank you. So it's time to get everybody back 5 days a week. Thank you very much for your time.
Good evening. Could we have your name and township, please?
Yes, my name is Christine Stegall, West Bradford Township. I appreciate the opportunity tonight to speak here in person after months of watching online. I look forward to the day that we can be in person, sitting in the room to hear and see all that is going on. I'm here tonight for 3 reasons. The first reason is that enough is enough. We are coming up on the 1-year anniversary of this pandemic. Back in March, our kids were sent home, presumably for 2 weeks. 52 weeks later, here we sit. I realize not all 52 weeks were in your control, but the last 6 months, the last 24 weeks, have been. While our kids have sat in a mixture of hybrid and online learning, other districts have found ways to get students back in school. It is past time for our district to do the same. In each survey that Downingtown has sent out, my husband and I have indicated that we wanted a full 5-day return in-person education for our kids. Our tax dollars that you've utilized for the past several years can surely be used in some way to make that happen, to allow in-person education while meeting safety standards. The second reason I'm here is that I am disappointed. When we moved here over 10 years ago, I spent hours researching districts. Downingtown consistently popped up as a great district, an innovative district, and a leader among Chester County schools. Today, it remains one of the few districts with no definite plan to bring our kids back. I know that is what you're voting on tonight, and I implore each of you to vote yes. You've had time to come up with plans and contingency plans for those plans. To listen last night to comments like, "We need more time," is infuriating. You've had your time. I was part of a task force last summer with my time that focused on the ideas, the problems, the solutions, and discussions. That was almost 9 months ago. You've had time. Last week, there was a school board member crying over the stress, the things that were happening, the decisions that had to be made. I've cried too. I've cried because your indecision has caused me to begin researching other districts and private schools. We've sat and analyzed the tuition costs, the cost of moving, the benefits we'd have elsewhere, and yet the most disturbing part was that when we asked our kids what they wanted and what they thought, They weren't even phased. My 16-year-old, my 15-year-old, and my 12-year-olds, they're totally uninvested and they're totally removed because of what this district has done. We have been here for a long time and they're just unmoved. I hope you hear me because I know I'm not the only one who would rather pack up and move than sit through more of this. And my third reason I'm here tonight is because I'm scared. I'm not scared of COVID, I'm cautious of COVID, but I'm scared of what this is doing to our kids and our community. I read an article out of a publication called Newswise from March 2nd, detailing findings collected that were studying the health insurance claims and looking at the pediatric population and zeroing in on a group of 13 to 18-year-olds. The results studied the effect of the pandemic on their mental health. Data was collected, over 32 billion healthcare records were studied, tracking changes seen from January to November of 2020 and comparing them to 2019. The statistic that stood out to me the most was, in comparing the August 2019 to August 2020, in the Northeast, for the age group of 13 to 18, there was a 333% increase in intentional self-harm claim lines out of those insurance claims as a percentage of all medical claim lines at a rate higher than any other region in any other month studied for that age group. Your job is to serve our students. 50% of the parents surveyed said that they would return and have their students return. I am asking you to do your job, vote yes, and get them in these buildings starting on Monday. Thank you.
Good
Hi.
evening. Could you give us your name and township, please?
Sure, Stephanie Moyer, East Brandywine Township. I have 3 sons, a 2nd grader, a 6th grader, and a 9th grader. I want to start off by thanking you all for your leadership. You have all had to make tough decisions throughout this pandemic. I keep saying to my colleagues, up until now, no one has ever planned and executed anything in a pandemic. I say to my kids all the time, no one living up until now has ever done what you've had to do. But you have done your due diligence. I listened to Dr. Lenardi's plan last week. It allows for people to make a decision based on what's best for their families, and they also have the flexibility to change their minds. I was in my home, in my living room, watching, and it's easy to see that she believes in the plan. It's a good plan. The numbers are going down. The data is clear that it isn't transmitted in schools. We have already lost so much time. Our kids have lost out on so many opportunities. Please vote to return to school 5 days, starting on Monday. If buildings need more time, reach out to parents. Parents will go there, they will scrub desks, they will move. I'll go. There's 5 days from now, I will scrub, I will move desks, we can help. But please vote for the return. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Greg Simotis, and I'm a resident of Euclid Township. I'm also the father of 2 children. And I'm gravely concerned about the well-being and the future of our students and our community. The parent surveys administered by the school district have clearly shown, time and time again, that the vast majority want their children to be in person, and yet most of our students have been afforded the opportunity for less than 30 days of in-person instruction in the course of a full calendar year. Data has made 2 things very clear. First, children are suffering more than ever, both academically and emotionally. Second, virus transmission during in-person instruction is extremely rare. There are many terrible diseases that exist in our world, and the price we've exacted from our children to give incremental protection to the vulnerable against this particular disease is out of all proportion and must be stopped with your vote tonight. The entire community's health and well-being depends on it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I am a proud mother of a hardworking
Excuse me, I'm sorry, could you give us your name and township, please?
Hi, yes, Rachel Bouguet, Euclid Township. I'm a proud mother of a hardworking elementary-aged daughter enrolled in the Downingtown Area School District. My daughter, like countless others of her age, received less than 20 days of in-person instruction over the past year, and as a direct result was deprived of critical childhood learning experiences during a developmental window that she will never, ever get back again. The overwhelming majority of parents surveyed have been asking you all for a full return to in-person education since July of 2020, but this board has ignored those clear requests and instead replaced the judgment of parents with their own judgments about what is best while parents watch their children's health and development decay. All the while, in the background, we have a union president who takes summer vacations but deems that schools are just too unsafe to operate. A superintendent who is on a private email saying that the hybrid model, quote, gives optics of safety, but is not really any safer. And several board members who keep schools closed in the name of comfort or safety, neither of which has been served by continued school closure. Imagine a world where fire stations, hospitals, grocery stores, trash pickup, utility companies, and other critical community services all stay closed in the name of comfort and safety. The time to put a permanent end to this failed experiment is tonight. It is time to rebuild our schools and rebuild our community and to work on alleviating the burden needlessly carried by our children and our teachers over this past year. We are all counting on you. Thank you.
Good evening. Could you give us your name and township, please?
Sure. My name is Tara Harlander. I'm from Upper Euclid, Region 2. I'm a mom of two, and I have a degree in microbiology and molecular biology. I'm here on behalf of over 250 families and countless more who have never been asked how we feel about these proposed changes. 1 year ago today, I left my office and pulled my kids out of in-person school in order for those who could not do so, to make room for them because we knew it would protect our parents who we care for. But it was not without a price, and we continue to suffer at home. We are eager to get back to our lives, and I would love for my kids to have a safe in-person option to start down the path to normalcy. But as the 5 of us who are in our household who are high risk and have not been able to be vaccinated, we also understand that now is not the time to relax as the variants emerge and viruses' ability to mutate. We are so close to the finish line. We don't want the last year to have been for nothing. And now the school district intends to take away any safe in-person option for us. Now we've been encouraged to start the gifted testing process for our son. And we have to decide when and how that can happen. Are we to send him into a crowded building and risk exposing us? And you can be sure that there are families who will be having the same dilemma for PSSAs. How will it affect the district when half of our students cannot take the PSSAs because their parents are high risk and have not been able to be vaccinated yet? The board claims to have decided to follow the Chester County Department of Health guidelines, and yet the following parts of even that guidance are being ignored. Discussing a testing plan is not the same as implementing it. Many other schools have already added this mitigation strategy before they went to 3 feet. Sitting kids 3 feet apart simply because it is allowed by the county, instead of looking for ways to maximize our space like the guidelines actually recommend. As a result, our kids will be closer together than necessary, and students in our smaller, older buildings will be zooming in from hallways and large instruction rooms because their classrooms cannot accommodate them. This is wholly inequitable. Notifications are not being sent out to whole classrooms using HIPAA as an excuse when in fact the county supports it. Using a commitment form as your only way of engaging with parents instead of sending out surveys to understand how this really impacts us and to actually listen to our concerns. Let's not forget that we are pushing forward with this plan mere weeks before our teachers will get vaccinated, for a gain of 27 in-person days for those who choose it. There are more options than this plan, which the board is being presented with. The plan forces families to choose between safety and in-person learning. This is a false choice. There are ways to meet the in-person needs of most without compromising safety. Our group is not in favor of closing schools. We are in favor of having as many kids in school as possible while still taking the proper safety precautions. We want a commitment to transparency, classroom notifications, routine screening, communication, and engaging with us. The best way to ensure minimal disruptions is to walk before we run. It will also safeguard us against lawsuits. Board members, ask your lawyers how this cherry picking of rules opens you up to legitimate, unsafe workplace lawsuits, or the chances of a parent suing after they become sick with long-haul symptoms because their child brought it home to them. This board has a responsibility to force the district administration to not take those loopholes and do better than cherry picking and the bare minimum. It is your obligation as public servants and the 9 people to whom our district administration reports. They report to you. Make them do better for all of our kids and provide us with a safe in-person option. Ask them if they will be joining their teachers in the building once the kids are packed in as if there's no pandemic. Ask them how many times they have sat in a classroom this year, and ask them if you are okay with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tracy Lavera, and I'm here tonight.
Could you tell me what township you're from?
We're in East Callan.
Thank you.
I was going to write a letter and speak from my heart. However, I asked all of my children if they wanted to come in and speak. I thought it would be more impactful. I have 4 kids in Downingtown Area School District, 2 17-year-olds, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old. The 3 older ones, like someone mentioned earlier, have pretty much lost hope in this year and coming back to school. But when I asked my 8-year-old, he said he wanted to come. So this is Finn.
Thank you. Could you, sir, give me your name and township, please? Just your name and what school you go to. How's that?
My name's Finn Lavera, and I go to Eastwood Elementary School.
Thank you, Finn. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Finn Lavera, and I am in 3rd grade. Eastwood, today I want to tell you why I believe you should open school for everyone, 5 days a week. We miss our friends and want to play together. Everyone deserves to be in school. We miss our teachers too. Staring at a screen is not school. Please open our schools now. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. You did a great job.
Not sure how to follow that up.
Yeah. Tough.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. So name and township, please.
Yeah, I'm Michael Smith from West Bradford Township. After months and months of discussions and debate, all comes to a vote tonight. And I'm thankful to the board, our wonderful teachers, and the amazing parents and caregivers at home for your engagement through this complex process. So genuine thank you. You know, together through this time, we've looked and studied data from the CDC, the American Academy of Pediatrics, Chester County Health Department, and we now know that We know that COVID transmission rates remain extremely low. Furthermore, we know that if a child in this age group does contract the virus, death rates are extremely low. In fact, 3.5 times lower than deaths from flu and pneumonia, which don't cause us to close our schools now. You may remember from the study I referenced last week from the American Academy of Pediatrics, as published on January 8th. It was researchers from Duke University and University of North Carolina. They found 32 cases of in-school transmission among nearly 100,000 students and staff over a 9-week period. Of those 32 cases, none were cases involving a child infecting an adult. We've heard from the pharmacist earlier tonight making similar statements based on data that he had found. Kids are not spreading amongst themselves, and they are not spreading it to teachers. This is data, it's not hypothetical. Together, we've studied the mental health impacts of long-term virtual schooling. We've reviewed data as well as personal stories from here in our area talking about isolation and depression, anxiety, suicide rates, and more. We've looked at the disproportional impacts on lower-income families, single-parent families, and minority families. We've shared real stories of parents and caregivers. This was never meant to be a long-term solution, but rather a bridge to get through the pandemic. Unfortunately, it's just further highlighted a number of the inequities in families within our district. My family, we have a friend with kids at elementary and middle school, and they can't afford housing in Downingtown because she had, as a single mom, to cut back from full-time to part-time. She couldn't afford the $10,000 a year in childcare, and she didn't qualify for CCIS at the time when she was working full-time. Now that she needs it, the wait list is too long. When we emailed the board at the beginning of the crisis, we spoke and they said, speak to Child's Place for a grant. And Child's Place did not offer a grant. So this is where she's at. She may have to leave the district. She has cut back her hours from full-time to part-time. And it's just one example of many. We've looked at academics. We've seen how our own data in Downingtown shows an 80% increase in 6th to 12th graders that are failing one or more classes, and a 60% increase in students at East and West that are absent. So let me just close with this. Research from the Brookings Institute states that when children lose out on an education, they lose out on future opportunities, including economic benefits such as additional earnings and far-reaching consequences. They looked at World War II, and they could see that nationwide impact impacted for over 40 years after that event. And they made a comment here saying, for whole societies closing down education today, there will likely be significant consequences tomorrow. We know this now. So the longer we delay our reopening, the longer and wider ranging the impact will be for our students and society alike. Our surrounding schools are either open now or will be soon. Twin Valley, Coatesville, Westchester, Owen J. Roberts, Garnet Valley, and more. Unionville this week on Monday voted to return full-time next Monday. Please follow the science, follow the data. Don't vote based on fear or hypotheticals. Vote based on fact. And I know you'll make the right decision when you do that. Vote to fully open Downingtown schools 5 days a week, full day, not half days, starting next Monday. Anything less and any further delay is not acceptable. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Good evening. Could
Good
you give us
evening.
your name and township?
Hi, my name is Steph Rosinski. I'm from Euclid Township, and I have 3 children in Downingtown, a 6th grader, 9th grader, and 11th grader at East. I'm not here to talk about the things that the people up here were speaking about, but I do want to kind of remind you about some things that I know that you will be starting to think about for next year. First, I would like to commend the board on navigating what has proven to be a very difficult and unprecedented year. I know that no matter what decisions you make, that there will be pushback from a group of people, and I do think that you have done the best that you could do, given the circumstances, and following science as your North Star to do what is best for our community. I want to revisit an issue from prior to the pandemic times that the district had been working on before we were all caught off guard with COVID. Downingtown had developed several subcommittees to address student mental health. I myself sat on a subcommittee with some of you and other DASD employees and parent Rachel Pavis to identify ways that we can reduce mental health and physical health concerns as they pertain to adolescents in adjusting school start times to better support sleep needs. Now more than ever, mental health is a pressing issue for adolescents. There are even more factors that we are seeing contributing to poor mental health since March of 2020. And we need to work harder than ever before to support our students and children in battling those many factors. One way that we can do this is by adjusting school start times to properly align with adolescent circadian rhythms so that we can help our children to thrive. As we are all aware, sleep can combat illness and disease, improve cognitive function, reduce risk-taking behaviors, and improve overall mental health. I would like to ask you to please keep in mind the need to keep mental health as a priority, not only in determining if children should be in school, but in finding ways to support them when they are in school. Starting school later will better help students get the necessary 8 to 10 hours of sleep that their growing bodies require. I would like to ask you to consider changing school start times, if even incrementally, over the coming years, so that we can get to a start time of no earlier than 8:30 a.m., as studies indicate are best for adolescents. Sleep plays such an integral role in wellness that my 2 high school-aged boys both decided independently to remain remote this entire school year to get more of it. The last bit of sleep that they are getting by not rushing off to catch a school bus 30 minutes or more before school started was worth the sacrifice of not being in person with their friends. It is clear to me by the choices that you have made in the decisions about how to open schools safely that you all believe in science. Let us also listen to the science on sleep and make the best choices for our children that we can make in every way possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Monica Eagles. I'm in East Cowan Township, and I have a high schooler at East High School, and I'd just like to tell you how horribly this has affected her, being out of school for an entire year. I've watched my happy teenager be miserable, depressed, lonely. She stays in her room. I never see her. She stares at a screen. She's got health problems now from staring at the screen so long. She is beyond upset that all of the milestones that have been ripped away from her, like homecoming, going to sports games, and all the things that teenagers should be doing. I mean, I've lived here my whole life. I wanted her to go to this school. She used to take pride in this school. Now she doesn't care, because why care? Nobody at school cares. And she's even talking about getting a GED and being finished with it because she doesn't want to be bothered, because nobody cares. And that's just kind of the entire attitude that's come about from this extended year-long school closure, and how it's affecting my child personally, and I'm sure I'm not the only one. But that's pretty much all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Dr. Lenardi, I will turn it over to you for your reentry update.
Thank you, President Bertoni. Since we did our entire reentry plan last week, I thought we would just review answers to questions based, that were asked last time, or other updates since last time. We have quite a few. So if you turn to the next slide, I'd like to provide an overview, which I don't typically do. I'd also like to provide updated metrics. There's an updated vaccine schedule for our staff. We talked a bit about testing last time, and we have some updates relative to testing. We also did not close the commitment form yet, so we have that those final numbers. And then there was some questions about what cafeteria specifically would look like, and also in our classrooms, when I talked about the possibility of if we couldn't get 3 feet, could we possibly Zoom as a last alternative? So I want to show you some of that as well, and end with a recommendation. I also put number 8 on here. I just don't have a good place to say this out loud, but I want to mention clubs, so I'd like to do that at the end of this. So as usual, we'll tag team with a few cabinet members, but I'd like to begin. So in this overview, there's 4 points that I'd like to make for the board and for the public. And the first one is that I do want people to know that safety is the priority. Like everything that we've done so far has been about safety. And the newest guidelines say 6 feet to the largest extent possible, or the maximum extent possible, and never less than 3. And we're working with that. It's been extremely labor intensive to change our buildings all around to get at that 6-foot distance for what we're doing now. And then we must change them all around again to get to having more students come back in as well, and not being less than 3 feet. The hard thing about that is that it's kind of a last minute change, because we can't really do it when the students are there now in our current model. We have to do it when they go before the next model comes in or the next change comes in. So it has been quite labor intensive. And so our survey that went out to parents was to try and give us a great idea about who would be back and who wouldn't. And I want to say thank you to the parents, because they responded and it was extremely helpful to us to prepare. So I often just talk about the logistics, but I do want to just emphasize that safety is a priority. The next thing is plexiglass, and I just want to mention that we have a lot of plexiglass in this district. We continually order more. We have it in places between desks and tables where we're far enough apart, but we have it there anyway. So we continue to order it. We'll have some improvising of some other barriers that we're going to talk about in a minute, but I just want to make mention that we have far more than we're really even obligated to have. And again, that's under the guise of safety. We've also tried to be quite creative with how we keep students away from each other, and more on that in a minute. The third thing that came out last time was testing. And there's 2 kinds of testing that schools will have available to them. And we'll talk about the rapid antigen testing. That's the one that I've been heavily involved in. I will say the only thing that the director last week talked about that surprised me was the Q testing. No schools have that, and the machinery for it are not available to schools yet. So I think that she was somewhat more, I guess was more hopeful or more positive than I would have been, because that's not available to us now. But again, good idea. More on that in a minute. And finally, I want to mention in an overview that throughout this whole time, I have, as our leader, and board, I think you have too, and certainly our other leaders in the room, have been extremely flexible. This is one issue that no one agrees with each other. Like, it's just a very, very divisive issue. And so we've tried to be attentive to safety, but also quite flexible. And so even with the recommendation that we made last week to come back as soon as we can, which would be next Monday, that will support some people, and some will really like that. On the other hand, our teachers asked for a number of things. And so when we go virtual Fridays for a bit longer, I've had many teachers tell me what they do on Fridays that they can't do when the students are split. Very, very positive. I've had a few parents say the same to me. I've had other parents say, well, my student isn't working that hard on Fridays. If that happens, we want to know, because we will change that. But that's a piece that teachers have asked. They have also asked for the early dismissal on Fridays. Certainly, it hurts my soul to say we'll ever give money back to the state, and I would never ask for this again, but I think in this particular circumstance, it probably makes sense to give them that time, because they're preparing 2 lessons each and every day. So again, my point is really that in all cases, we're trying to reach a compromise and get someone to at least get something that they wanted, since it is so divisive. I know I've had teachers say, why don't we just make the kids who don't want to be here in person just be in DCA? I don't think that's fair to parents or students who have a relationship with their teacher now all year, to say all of a sudden in March, never mind, you have a new teacher. So I mean, there's a number of things like that I think we've tried to be particularly flexible. Several districts around us, I know, have asked parents to make a commitment and not change their mind. I also don't think that's fair to parents. I don't want them to continually change their mind. I don't think that's fair to teachers. But I think if they make a decision for 8 weeks, I've asked them to do that. They have. I appreciate that. Now I'm saying, okay, can we make another decision? But if they want to change their mind one time to come either in or out, depending on how they feel, I want our parents to be able to do that. So again, I don't think we've been overly strict in make a decision and don't change your mind. So again, in the spirit of compromise, trying to do all of that. So I just wanted to say a couple of these things as an overview to just say that there is a lot of compromise in our minds about how to do this best. And so while we stay in line with the Chester County guidelines, I think the ultimate recommendation will provide something for everyone. So let's just go through a couple of the changes. I don't want to rehash last week. I just want to give updates. So the update in the metrics, as you know, we have to have 3 consecutive weeks. So if you look at week 2, we're at 95, and it's a Friday average, by the way. We're at 95, so that's below 100. Week 1, which is this past Friday, was 84. And actually, this Friday would be the 3rd week. But Monday's numbers were 76.8, Tuesdays were 75.4, Wednesdays were 76.4. So I feel pretty good that we're going in the right direction and we'll be under the amount for 3 consecutive weeks. And I also know that we've had some people ask us to look at Downingtown specific statistics. And while we don't do that, we generally follow the Chester County. Downingtown this past week was 55.6. So even in our local area, we're doing really well. We don't look at that just because our staff comes from all over, but the numbers are certainly going in the right direction. So I wanted to just give that update regarding metrics. The next slide is vaccination, and the staff knows this, but the public may not. This has changed a number of times, but just briefly, there's 2 phases. In phase 1, which our teachers and staff will be vaccinated March 12th through the 20th, and they have signed up. Actually, an email was supposed to come out today for their specific appointments, and it hasn't come out yet. The state says they're behind, so I hope it comes out either tonight or early tomorrow morning. But the phase 1 group was given to us by the state, and it is as I have listed on the slide: K-12 special ed teachers and in-classroom support, K-12 ELL teachers and in-classroom support, all K-6 teachers and staff, and then it really says all K-6 bus drivers and those transporting elementary students, but our bus drivers do both, so I just called it K-12. So that's our first group in phase 1. Then in phase 2, we're expected the week of March 15th to have everybody else. That would be all of our other staff, so mostly secondary, and then of course all administrators and coaches. Anyone that gets any paycheck from us can be in this phase 2, and that's March 15th, that week that we're supposed to get another registration to say, do you still want to get this? Because some people are getting it in other places. And then also, I think March 19th, the state has to put in for the doses. The week of March 29th, I think the schedule will come out, and right after the Easter holiday, phase 2 is supposed to get vaccinated. So that's just an update as I know it. It changes a little bit, but we are right on the cusp of getting all of our faculty and staff, and all of our contractors, by the way, vaccinated. All right, let's switch to testing.
Thank you, Dr. Lenardi. So as Dr. Lenardi mentioned, we are looking to implement rapid antigen testing at the buildings. So in order to start that, we have to have people trained. So on Thursday, March 11th, our nurses will be trained in the rapid antigen testing, and our nurse curriculum leader will become a certified trainer. So she'll be able to train others after Thursday. So if we find additional staff, and we've talked about that a little bit, particularly maybe some of our athletic trainers might want to be trained in doing that for some of our students that are playing spring sports. So we'll look for additional people to train. On Thursday, March 11th, we'll also have somebody from central office trained as well, so that all of our buildings will have somebody located at them that can provide the rapid antigen testing. As far as our plan in the buildings, we will offer testing before and after school, so our nurses will be providing that testing, so we'll have to establish a schedule for teachers to sign up. We are looking at specific subgroups. The whole purpose of the rapid antigen testing for staff is to test the same people over time to again determine the amount or rate of transmission that might be happening in schools. So we want to find a cohort, test them regularly so that we can be providing that information, and then expand from there. Of course, it is voluntary, so we can't force people to participate in that. So once we establish a cohort, understand how many people we'll have,
we can grow from there. But we also want to make sure that we work out any kinks at the beginning of it, as well as also manage what our nurses' time looks like, because they're also contact tracing and doing health screenings and all the other things that are part of their job. So we'll be managing that and expanding on that. The testing goes through CHOP, so there is a reporting mechanism for it. So when the nurses give the test, there's a scanner, and so it'll get scanned, the data will go into the system, and it'll be reported to the Chester County Department of Health as well as CHOP. Teachers will have the information within 15 minutes, so we'll ask them to take the test, go to their room, and wait the 15 minutes, and then they'll receive a result from the nurse. And then within an hour, they'll also receive a report from the online system letting them know that they were negative or positive. For future considerations, we are looking at student testing, which is for a bit of a different purpose. If we're testing students, we're really looking at some symptomatic students. And the purpose of that would be to help us help parents to make some decisions about what to do if their child is symptomatic at school. It would not change our decision. We would still send students home that are exhibiting symptoms of COVID. But with the negative test, students don't need to stay out the full 10 days. If they have a negative test and once symptoms resolve themselves, they can return to school. So for example, that would mean being fever-free for 24 hours without medication and a reduction in other symptoms. So it allows students to come back to school a little bit quicker. In regards to the PCR testing, as Dr. Lenardi said, we don't have the machinery for that at this point in time. It also does require a separate training from the rapid antigen training that the nurses will be receiving. So we're looking into who could provide that for us, and then we're just really kind of waiting to see what would be provided to us from the Department of Health. So I know Dr. Lenardi had mentioned to me a possibility of 2 machines to help us with that testing. And in a district that large, that would present for us a bit of a challenge as far as where we would locate it, how we would get people that testing. So those are things that we're exploring, is finding a central location and then sort of setting up the process. If we gave somebody a rapid antigen test and it came out positive, sending them to receive that further testing and where we would do that and how we would work that process out.
This next slide shows an update on our re-entry commitment form. As you can see, we have, as of today, at about 11:30 a.m., nearly a 94% response rate, with about 66% saying they would like to return 4 or 5 days in person, and about 28% choosing one of our online options. So thank you to all the families who have completed this form, and also those who reached out to the principals to help get that information so that we may adequately prepare for your return. The second point here is just that classroom communications for K-5, with the updated Chester County Health Department guidance based on communications for classrooms, we have decided that we will be adding to our school-wide communications information about individual classrooms, so specifically which classroom a case took place in, but that will be just through the K-5 level.
For our cafeteria setups, we are or will utilize maximum distancing to the greatest extent possible. And just to clarify for any folks listening, when we talk about 6 or 3 feet, we are referring to the approximate center of the body to the next individual's center of the body. It is not shoulder to shoulder. It is not edge of the desk to the next edge of the desk. So we will utilize that distancing measurements in our cafeterias. Some of our cafeterias, everyone will be facing in one direction, or in a staggered model if they're sitting across from each other. You're going to see some photographs here in a second where we are utilizing the plexiglass or trifold, and even a third option that one of our custodians actually created and came up with, and that is what I'll call a shrink wrap barrier. So a lot of credit goes out to our building-based staff from our administration and teachers, custodians, et cetera, that are currently or have already put these things in place for our cafeterias to be ready for kids. So there's Beaver Creek, and you can see that as a plexiglass model, and those stands were created by our facility staff. Bradford Heights with some trifolds. Brandywine Wallace all sitting facing in one direction. East Ward Elementary has plenty of space to spread everybody out and face one direction. Lionville Elementary using some trifolds and plexiglass. Pickering Valley facing one direction. There's an example of Shimona Creek using trifolds and facing one direction. Springton Manor facing one direction. Euclid Hills, again, facing one direction. West Bradford using some plexiglass dividers down the middle of the tables. Here is Marsh Creek, and it might be hardboard from where you're sitting, but that is the shrink wrap barrier created, or the idea, the concept was created by one of our custodians, and that is shrink wrap, which is often used in Home Depots, Costco's, et cetera, where they wrap a pallet of goods. So that is stretched between those two pole-like contraptions. Downingtown Middle School, and using some trifolds. Lineville Middle School as well. East, some desks spread out through their cafeteria. West, using tables and some trifolds. And there's our STEM Academy. And to further clarify, our 6 secondary schools, East, West, Downingtown Middle, Marsh Creek, and STEM, will utilize their cafeterias as well as another alternate location in order to spread the students out. So at East, West, Downingtown, and Lineville Middle, they'll use their auxiliary gyms. Marsh Creek is also looking to use the library, and the STEM Academy, the students are used to being spread out throughout the building at lunchtime, and they'll continue to do that. I actually think that is a photograph of the new mezzanine, the lower level, the addition at STEM. And I'm sorry, Beaver Creek, they have been using classrooms due to their small cafeteria, and they will continue to do that for lunchtime. So we'll move into the classroom setup. Again, some sample photographs for you. We'll continue with the maximum distancing to the greatest extent possible, and using either plexiglass or trifold dividers. Now, last week, Dr. Lenardi had mentioned about the possibility of students Zooming from another location, and after some further investigation, we don't really think that's going to happen. So at the STEM Academy, right now there's a potential of 5 classrooms where students may have to Zoom from another location, but they would set up a rotation. So it might be 3 today and then 3 other students tomorrow. However, Mr. Campbell is continuing to look at that, and by the time this week ends, he could be down to 0. He's looking at further moving of classrooms that have maximum space. So we could be at 5 or we could be down to 0 as he continues to look at that. Beaver Creek, we have a situation in both 3rd and 5th grades where our space is at a maximum, and therefore we have other classrooms that are empty, and we will put the overflow students for those rooms and have a certified substitute teacher working with those students, again on a rotational basis. So those are the only 2 situations we know of right now where there might be a little bit of issue with space and overflow, and one may not be an issue at all by the end of the week. And I believe, Ms. Sheila, you've rotated through all the pictures. Thank you.
Okay, so here's our recommendation. We used the same slide that we used last week. I just made it a little more succinct. All students will have the option to return to in-person instruction. We are recommending Monday, March 15th. We believe that we are ready. Virtual Fridays will continue, we're suggesting, through April 16th. That would give us 4 weeks, and then we could switch to the 5-day week model. And Fridays will remain early dismissals through June 4th. So that was our recommendation last week. It continues to be our recommendation today after interacting with all of the principals and spending quite a bit of time discussing this. We still think we're on track to do that. The final slide, and it will be up for the board conversation, and the final slide that I said I wanted to put in that didn't really fit anywhere is, board, you know this and principals know this, but I want to say it out loud. Our in-person clubs will begin after the spring break, April the 6th, and our foundation is currently virtual. They'll have spring and summer classes. They will have the option of being in person as well. They are our teachers and our students. And then Dark, I know, is looking for summer classes, and that will be, we will allow that. And I think, Director Kring, you're looking for what those buildings are, and we're working feverishly on that because we will have a lot of summer school this summer, so we haven't quite completed that, but it's coming relatively soon. So I just wanted to say that piece out loud, just a little errant, not involved in all the other conversations. So that completes our update, and President Bertoni, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Superintendent Lenardi. Dr. Lenardi, does anyone have any questions? I ask that you raise your hand so I can. Director Bluff.
Dr. Reed, the shrink wrap, is that a temporary solution or a permanent solution?
We would use that for the remainder of the year until we can get more plexiglass. One thing that's nice about it is it can be taken off and discarded at the end of the day with a new piece that comes straight across.
Thank you.
Could you clarify that it's not saran wrap that we use at home, that it's thicker and more purposeful? And did I hear that we have more on order, so it could be replaced should it arrive?
Correct, yes, and you've kind of already answered the statement. It is thicker. It is much thicker than what you would see in your home use. It's a thicker type of plastic.
Just a follow-up question about that I like shrink wrap. I have saran wrap in my head. So can that be cleaned, or what do we do? Do we just replace it after every lunch? Like, what happens with that?
Yeah, I'll begin the answer, and then maybe Mr. Lawver can chime in. Yes, it can be wiped down, but then it can also be discarded at the end of the day and replaced.
Okay, and so
That was the advantage of it. You can just cut it off and throw it away. It only takes a minute. It comes on a roll with 2 handles on each end, so you just hook it because it sticks and go down from the one post, take it up the other end of the table. It is much heavier than saran wrap. It's like 5 mils. It's heavy duty because it's what's for packaging on pallets, but they're doing it in 5 ply. We're doing it 5 times around each time. But then the beauty of it is you can just cut it, take it off. It only takes a few minutes to put it back on again.
Okay, because the cleaning part is important too, because you can wipe down plexiglass. So that was my thinking. Can you also wipe this down? Is it sturdy enough?
Yeah.
So I'm hearing yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is pretty thick from my working in a warehouse days, that you need an X-Acto knife to get that off of there. Dr. Reed, is there any, especially you mentioned Beaver Creek and having cafeteria issues there, any thoughts on tents for when we do have non-thunderstorm weather? Is it possible to put something up in parking areas?
We haven't explored tents at this time. I know some of the issues you could have there are, one, availability because of the tents that are already utilizing through various organizations in our area. 2, again, I might defer to Mr. Lawver. You potentially, I'm not sure, depending on the size of the tent, could have permit type issues that you would need to pass. But at this time, we're not looking at that. However, as the weather would get nicer, utilizing the outside spaces would absolutely be an option, and is something, for example, I know East and West are going to do. STEM is going to do as well, because they do have some outdoor seating, and our younger schools could do that, space permitting and having proper places to eat outside.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, a lot of picnics might be in order.
Director, go ahead. Director Graham.
What is the timeline for implementation of our testing plan?
So again, testing, for rapid antigen testing?
Yes.
Yes, so once we're trained tomorrow, we'll be able to implement. So the next step for us, and the only unknown factor I think we have, is the MOA has to be signed. We have to show proof of the training for our nurses, and once we submit that, we can begin receiving tests. So I'm not quite sure what the timeline is for test delivery, but as soon as they're with us, we can start.
Wonderful, thank you. To follow up with that, have we discussed having student cohorts such as athletics?
Not that I'm aware of that we were specifically discussing students for athletics. When we discussed students and moving into that phase, it was more to test students that might be symptomatic coming to the nurse's office.
I would really think that it would make sense to consider certain student cohorts as well, especially with the Chester County Health Department recommending that we get to roughly 75% of our community being tested. I do believe that it is a fairly simple, it's an obvious cohort. It's a cohort who does take more risks. So for me, I would really like to see that as an option moving forward.
And we could speak with Mr. Siegel and look at how we best would implement that with students.
That would be great. I have one question about in-person clubs. If in-person clubs move to well, if clubs move to being in person, will virtual students still be allowed to attend, or will we no longer be allowing anyone who is virtual attend clubs?
I believe we would do it exactly like just like we're doing Roomers and Zoomers. We've done that all year. We won't change that.
Okay, wonderful, thank you.
I'm sure there are quite a few staff members watching. I do have two questions. One, for them, when will they have their class lists so that they're able to make the seating chart that they need to put up? And how are we going to go about moving? I know we're switching some classrooms. How are we going to go about moving things?
And Dr. Matei may know this, but the class lists are live. They should have that information already, so it might be the wrong click or the wrong location to look, and he can explain that
So they
further.
already have that available to them?
Correct.
You know which ones they'll have on Monday?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, great.
It is kind of like a live rollover. It is there.
And
As of last Friday, the information from the survey was loaded for teachers, so there's an available blended learning group for a child who is full-time Zoom or full-time in person.
Okay, and have we updated any data we've gotten the last 2 days? Is it all in there?
Absolutely. So we did an upload last week, and the schools that are getting phone calls from parents are updating that information, and it appears live.
It appears live. Oh, that's great. See, I'm used to the old list. We didn't have this when my kids were there. And then as far as moving, I know, I understand this week actually works rather well because we have early dismissal on Thursday, and then we have a teacher day on Friday. Classrooms that have to change, who's going to be responsible for moving all that stuff?
So I think if there's an individual that needs assistance, they consult with their building principal and they work together with their custodial team to see what things might need to be moved that are heavier in nature. And just as we've done in other moves, some things the staff member may want to do on their own or may need to do on their own. So it's just kind of the school working together to get it done.
Well, I guess because it is a very sensitive issue, I ask that the principals confer with their staff and ask them what help they might need moving, and if we need to hire additional staff, custodial staff, whatever, to help move, if it involves moving that type, the type of material, that we make sure we have them on hand Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, we've been monitoring it almost to the hour of how it's going. We're doing really well.
Well, I know some things can't move until the children are out of the building.
Till they arrive, and there's going to be some last minute things that happen, and we're going to make quick adjustments on that. We'll probably bring in maybe one of the evening custodians, bring them in early to help that day guy out, where the buildings that only have one day guy there, because he'll have his hands really full on that first day. So we'll have some extra help there. Plus, we'll pull maintenance guys out to move desks, do whatever they got to get them going and get it set up and help it run smoothly.
And I know the first couple of days are going to be difficult because we won't know, and building principals won't know how many students are there until students actually show up. So I guess it's a plea to parents to please give them a little bit of slack. Give us a little time, because there may be, we did have a percentage that haven't answered. They may show up and they weren't expected. Or someone who planned to come in may now fear they were exposed and be deciding to keep their child home. So I ask that you communicate with your teachers and let them know if your students are coming or not coming in, and that you give them a few days, especially with busing too, the first few days that we start back. And I am still a little concerned about Beaver Creek with the overflow. I would like to know, if we go forward with opening on March 15th, how many students that impacts, and if we could possibly find another way to not have students not with their teachers.
President Attorney, just following up with Beaver Creek, if I heard correctly, Beaver Creek is the only school where children are going to be eating in classrooms. And this is in grades 3 and 4 only, or across the board?
In order to fit the students, Dr. Lawless can fit about 55 students in the cafeteria. Beaver Creek has one of the smallest cafeterias in the district, and they are currently having students eat in classrooms because of the amount of kids that they can only fit right now.
At all
So they'll
grade
continue
levels.
to do that. So I believe that's multiple grade levels that are doing that right now, where some students have to eat in the classroom.
So I have two questions, I guess one question and one comment. I guess my first question, are we doing something for the staff in that school so that if I'm a teacher and I am sitting with my children, I'm teaching my children in a hybrid model, which is difficult in and of itself, and then I'm also sitting there and eating with the children, is someone coming in and relieving the teacher, someone helping with the children, you know, disposing of trash, all the cafeteria things that go on?
Yeah, they've been doing that all year, and contractually, the teachers are obligated to a 30-minute duty-free lunch. So if they were sitting in the room with the students eating their lunch, that would be by their choice and not necessarily forced to do that because of what we have in our collective bargaining agreement.
But someone else is somebody else is sitting with the children. I mean, the teacher would only be there if no one else.
Right, and it may not be that they're actually physically sitting in the room. You could be standing in the hallway in a position where you could see two classrooms at once.
Right.
And monitoring two groups of students, right?
Okay. I guess my comment is, one of our parents who spoke at the beginning of the meeting made a statement that has resonated with me, that this pandemic has highlighted the inequities in our district. And in my mind, if we have only one school in our district that is forced to have children eat in their classrooms, that is a blatant inequity that needs to be addressed. So I feel as though the board needs to take on that challenge, and whatever that looks like for Beaver Creek. And I'd just like to put that out there. Dr. McNeil, you took the words right out of my mouth. I was going to implore upon the board, and I understand it's not a conversation for tonight, but Beaver Creek is the oldest school in the district and in dire need of some type of renovation. And this pandemic highlights what has been pushed back year after year. So when we sit down to prioritize direction this district is going in, I ask that you please consider that. Any other
Thank you.
Director Kring.
Thank you. I think this is for Mr. Mattis. Buses. So we're looking at about a 65% students coming back. Theoretically, not all of those are going to be riding the bus. Do you have an indication of how full our buses are going to be? Are they going to be half full as normal, or are we going to be able to have some good spacing?
We think there are going to be, upwards of 40 students per bus. We're trying to space them out as much as we can. In particular, Marsh Creek and Shimona Creek we have a higher density in that area. So we're going to have students from both schools on the same bus more than usual to try to quickly get kids home and get the bus off to the next location. But I think we're going to be fine. I really do. I think our transportation team has been working overtime, weekends. This is like our 6th reopening or so. So they feel pretty good that if our data is correct that we're getting from parents, we think we'll be fine with reopening.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Director Wisdom.
Thank you. I had some parents express that they would not send their children into the schools if they would be Zooming from outside of the classroom. Now, while I'm glad that that's looking like we're going to have to do very little of that, I was wondering if they would be notified, that would parents know if their children were Zooming from outside of the classroom? Would they be notified of that? I don't know.
It's something we can absolutely do, and right now it's only looking like STEM and Beaver Creek, and STEM it might not be at all that happens, and everybody's going to take a turn. there's going to be a rotation, so it's not the same students all the time. And I'm sorry, I made an error earlier. Bradford Heights, 5th grade, also has to eat in the classrooms. I missed that on my chart that's in front of me.
So Dr. Reed, what you're saying is if there's a classroom that needs to have a number of students Zooming, the principal and the teacher will send a schedule to every parent in the class so they're understanding what the plan is?
We can do that.
Thank you.
Dr. Reed, may I ask Dr. Reed a question about Bradford Heights, the 5th grade there? Are they eating in their classroom because the overall size of the 5th grade is too large to contain all 5th graders in the cafeteria at one time?
That's what I believe, Director Bluss. I don't have that specific detail on the data that we collected, but I believe it's due to the size.
Do you know if they're doing any rotation of, one class not eating in their class, one class eating in their classroom, the others in the cafeteria, and then rotating?
We can do that, but the way that this note reads is that the 5th grade will continue to eat in the classroom. So I can find out more and put some information in the update to see if it's the entire 5th grade or just a classroom or two.
So as we look about going back to school in September, if we have some of the same concerns, and certainly for Beaver Creek right now, I know we haven't thought of the idea of any tent space, but certainly Beaver Creek needs some sort of creative approach right now for the current problems that they have with their eating in their classrooms. Is that something that we can look at?
To look at tents right now?
Yeah.
I mean,
or
that's something that.
Some opportunity to do outside lunches, at least on days that the weather permits.
Yeah, I mean, I think I mentioned that earlier. That's something that we can absolutely take a look at when the weather's proper and space is available, et cetera. It's absolutely something we can look into.
Thank you. It sounds like from your reporting, that might be the only school that needs that immediate attention. Thank you.
But long-term attention, it brought to mind that Bradford Heights is the one school that doesn't have a gym, which is one of the reasons why they don't have great lunch space. So, Director Gibson?
I was just going to, along with Director Bluss, Dr. Reed, Bradford Heights 5th grade has been eating in their classrooms since they've been back in the building. They have not been able to be in the cafeteria at all this year, correct? Okay.
To that point. Director Wisdom.
As far as the potential exposure notifications, I know that K through 5 will go to the class notification. Will it look the same for 6 through 12 then?
No, because the
children. Will it look the same as it does now, where it's just like
Yeah.
your school?
Because they switch classes, it's more difficult.
Okay.
Do I have any other questions? Director Wisdom.
I don't know how many teachers are vaccinated already in our schools, but I did see a mention of somebody saying that maybe only having vaccinated teachers have lunchroom duty just as a precautionary measure. I don't know if that's in any way a possibility for any of the schools.
Yeah. Do we have?
Could we look into that maybe?
Yeah, Dr. Lenardi is writing it down.
Yeah, I'm writing it down. I don't know that we know who they are, and I don't know that we can really know, unless they offer that information, we likely wouldn't ask that.
Yeah, well, somebody had mentioned that,
Yeah,
and I didn't
I
know
read
if
that
that
as
would
well,
be something that other teachers would be willing to take on if they were already vaccinated, because that is the place where people have their masks off.
Yeah.
So.
Good point.
May I interject?
Vice President Britton?
I just wanted to thank the people in this room and the staff, our principals. What I'm hearing is really the bridge that I was looking forward to hearing. Safety and in-person instruction are not mutually exclusive discussions. They are highly dependent on one another for staff safety, student safety. And I heard a lot of work went into the last week since we've had the director of CC, Chester County Department of Health here. And I feel like what's being put forth really means that kids are going to have continuity of education, not just in person. So thank you.
Director Bluss?
Go ahead.
I just wanted, I'm sure administration is sensitive to this because you mentioned, President Bertoni, that we have a teacher professional development day on Friday. And Work Collaboration Day is a very, very important day for the elementary teachers, especially because they do a standards-based report card. And it takes an exorbitant amount of time to complete a standards-based report card. So I would just like administration to be sensitive to the fact that we're not asking teachers to be doing moving of things for the entire day on that day. Teachers need time, and we have worked a long time to give teachers that time. They're the only ones, the secondary teachers are not on a trimester, and they're the only ones doing a standards-based report card, so they deserve that time to complete that report card. So I just ask that we're sensitive to that and make sure they have time to complete the report card that day. Thank you.
So before you move on, Dr. McNeil, we, on that work collaboration day, we don't assign anything else for teachers.
Thank you, Dr. Lenardi.
No,
I didn't want to assume
I think the
that,
fear
but thank
is that they're getting ready for Mondays, so that we don't ask them.
We never ask them. That's my point. We don't ask. Right.
Well, we've never had a pandemic where we had to move a classroom either, right? So, wait, Director Bluss?
I was just going to mention that most of the time during lunches, monitors are with children. I don't know whether or not they have had their vaccines, but most of the time it's not teachers doing duty during lunch.
Well, I'm sorry, Vice President Britton?
I also just wanted to make sure that we're supporting staff as they go get their tests. I don't know what that looks like quite yet, and I'm sure you guys are working diligently on what that will look like. But if there's something that the board can do to help make sure that that happens in an efficient manner, I'd like to know.
Any other questions? All right, well then I will move on to the motion before us. Can I have a motion to request approval for the option to return to a full-day in-person instructional model beginning March 15th, provided the Chester County community transmission level is below 100 per 100,000 and PCR rate is below 10% for the previous 3 consecutive weeks. Additionally, continue virtual Fridays through April 16th for all students except the low incidence programs, and continue early dismissal on Fridays through June 4th as outlined in the revised 2020-21 district calendar. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion.
I'd like to make a motion for amendment. There are 3 parts. I'd like to discuss each one individually. I would first like to make a motion to move the start date for elementary, 6th grade, and middle school to March 29th. I believe this would give parents time to make informed consent. Every parent should know exactly what social distancing would look like in their school, in the lunchroom and classroom. I saw many times that it said to the greatest extent possible, but everybody should know precisely what the social distancing is in their classroom. And I heard that the class lists are complete. 6 feet is 6 feet, 3 feet is 3 feet. Anybody who requests that information should be able to get it, and we should absolutely be transparent with that information. And the reason why it's important is because the Chester County Health Department does not recommend 3 feet. 3 feet should be the exception, not the rule. So every parent needs to know what risk their family is taking. By moving the start date, it will give our lower level teachers more time to get vaccinated and closer to immunity. All of our teachers have asked for this. They have worked diligently for this district. Moving the date will also move the start date away from the end of the trimester when our teachers are already completing extra work. We heard Dr. McNeil talking about how report cards are incredibly time-consuming. It just seems like this is one more thing that we can do to help our teachers. This would also give the district more time to enact upon plans for mitigation strategies such as a testing program.
Director Graham.
Yes,
I'm trying to keep notes as far as what you're.
I can email it to you.
No, I'm
Yes?
sorry.
Oh.
What I would prefer, what I think would be more appropriate procedure
Mhm.
is for you to make your modifications to the motion.
Uh-huh.
Once it's seconded, we could have discussion, and then you can
Excellent.
make the points, I think,
Okay.
that need to be made. So
I would-
right now, what I have is you would like to propose an amendment
Yep.
to have a start date of March 29th, 2021. That was the first portion. You had 3. What is the second and third?
That is only for elementary, 6th grade, and middle school. Can we get a second and discuss before we move on?
Is there a second? Oh, well, do you want all 3 things, or you want to do one?
President Bertoni, what I was thinking was we would allow Director Graham to make her amendment, which I understand has 3 components.
So give us the other 2 components.
Yes, that's what I would
Thank you.
propose.
My second motion, I would like to motion to stagger a return to high school to ensure 6 feet of social distancing to all. And my third, it's actually not an amendment. I would like to move to table the vote to end virtual Fridays until we are able to assess their continued value to our virtual students.
Do I have a second? So the motion fails? The amendment fails.
The amendment to the motion dies, and the
Okay.
board can now determine and discuss the primary motion.
The current motion. Do I have any comments regarding the motion that's on the floor? Seeing none, I will ask for a roll call vote, please.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Blusk?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Graham?
My vote is based on the way this plan has evolved. There is no input from the community, and its creation feels like it has been created behind closed doors. An effective school board advocates for a thorough and efficient system of public education by engaging and promoting community support, by seeking input, building support networks, and generating action. We are supposed to model responsible governance and leadership by engaging all community stakeholders. We have not been good leaders, and we can do better. It is still a global pandemic, and no one says this is safe. I know there is a way to get more kids in school, and I cannot stress enough that I want kids in school, but that should not mean that we have to compromise the health and safety of our students, staff, and community. My vote for this plan is no.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Director Kring?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes. Motion carries. Dr. Lenardi, we move on to the superintendent report.
Oh, wait, you just have your B is the,
Oh, B, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I skipped over. Request approval of a memorandum of agreement between Chester County Health Department and the Downingtown Area School District. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Anyone have any questions?
Director Kring,
Yes.
Vice President Britton,
Yes.
Director McNeil,
Yes.
Director Gibson,
Yes.
Director Houghton,
Yes.
Director Blust,
Yes.
Director Wisdom,
Yes.
Director Graham,
Yes.
President Bertoni.
Yes, thank you. Superintendent report.
Okay, thank you. First, directors, I have applause, and we have one student that we'd like to recognize, and I can hardly wait till we get to the place where the students can actually come back in the room. But anyway, congratulations to fourth grade Springton Manor, Downingtown Cyber Academy student Carter Smallwood for winning the United States Tennis Association Hunters Green Buckhorn U12 tennis tournament in Florida last month. And there's a picture of our young student athlete. Carter won 6 matches with the final going to a tiebreaker. Congratulations to you, Carter, on this outstanding achievement, and we look forward to many, many good things as you grow up and become even better and better at your sport. So that completes the applause, and board members, if you'll indulge us, Mr. Mattis and I would like to tag team and provide the budget presentation to you.
Thank you, Dr. Lenardi. We're going to start off by updating the board on our capital projects plan for next year. There we go. Okay, so this is a review of what we talked about at this time last month, February 10th. We had an original budget for our capital plan of almost $13 million. Since then, we've made some revisions to our capital plan, which you can see in the middle column. The total now is $9,136,000. Of that $9.1 million, about $1 million we anticipate is going to be available from federal funding grant that will pay for instructional technology. So the total Downingtown spend would be about $8,046,000 and about $1 million from the federal grant. You can see in the final column, we made about $3.8 million worth of adjustments, and we'll go through what those adjustments are by department. For facilities, we are looking to defer the window replacement at Downingtown High School East. We're also looking to reduce engineering fees by about $200,000 for the east and west chiller replacement. Dale Lawver feels he can manage that expense, and we're going to take him up on his offer to reduce that. The Lineville Elementary School boiler, we're looking to defer that project, as well as the DMS and LMS boiler replacements for $1.3 million. At Downingtown High School West, we have the walk-in refrigerator and freezer for $75,000 that would defer, and the furniture budget would be reduced from $400,000 to $50,000 district-wide. And then finally, the Kottmeyer Stadium scoreboard replacement would be deferred for another year. Total of those deferrals and adjustments for the facilities department is about $2.8 million. And we'll do some preventative maintenance on these items too, so that we can help ensure that these items are going to last through the next school year. Mr. Lawver and I have talked about that. We're going to spend some money out of this year's budget to try to make that happen for the boilers, scoreboards, and the walk-in refrigerators and freezers. So we feel confident that we're going to be able to add some additional life to these items. As we look at technology, look in the middle section there, we have 3 computer labs. We have the art computer lab, the technology education computer lab, and the TV studio labs in our high schools. We feel that the computers in these labs can last another year. So we're asking to defer purchase of those equipment items, those computers in those computer labs for another year, total of about $255,000. And then finally, in our curriculum area, we're looking at an adjustment of $750,000 for our English language arts program. We will implement the English language arts program over 2 years. So next year we'll do K-2, and then the following year we'll do grade 3 through 5. So if we look at a total bird's eye look at our capital plan for next year and the out years, if we look at, again, our adjusted budget column for 2021-22, total of $9.1 million, about $1 million coming from a federal grant. And then in our out years of our budget, typically what we do in our capital program, we have about a $10 million budget per year. To try to bring our long-term general fund budget and capital fund budgets into alignment with revenues equaling expenses, we're looking at and recommending that we reduce our long-term capital expenditures out in the second through the fifth year of our 5-year plan down to $6 million per year. The capital budget is on the board's agenda tonight for consideration. It's under the finance section of the agenda, and we will be glad to field any questions you have.
So, move this. I'd like to say that I think that's a wise idea with curriculum. It might be something that we want to continue doing things that way so that we're a little more fiscally responsible. Technology. So if we have 3 sets of computer labs that can last another year, am I hearing that we can get another year on machines like this on a regular basis and not just in a year when we are so financially strapped?
Director McNeil, these labs have sat primarily empty for 12 months. So in this case, it's a good single case use to extend their life for another year because labs have primarily been empty. This wouldn't be a normal recommendation that I would like to make beyond the normal lifespan of a device.
So if a computer sits and isn't used, it has a longer life? Is that what I'm hearing?
It's just less used. It's like putting less miles on your car if the car sat in the driveway for a year.
Okay. So, all right. Facilities. So I'm going to come back to Mr. Laver because I am still very concerned about facilities. So I'm going to just take a couple of line items. And I understand, Mr. Laver, that you said we can wait another year for Downingtown East. I understand that. The chillers. So originally, so we're taking off $200,000. Does that mean we got a lower bid on the chillers? Because I think originally we heard that the price was going up. And so, is that right? You got a lower bid?
Yes, you'll notice on our agenda tonight that that's a real price that we have, and you'll notice that it's done through a CoStars program. So I avoided the engineering, which was about $70,000.
Okay.
We got a discount from the manufacturer for doing both buildings at once, buying 4 chillers at once. That's about another $75,000 in there. Plus, they discounted us again more for the one company getting both projects. So it turned out to be about a $200,000 savings from what we had anticipated. Plus, it speeds the process up. I do appreciate the CoStars program, because if it's approved tonight, then we get our order in. Of course, once you put your order in, they don't have these sitting on the shelf. They're manufactured for you, and that's about a 10-week period till they arrive at our place and then put them in and get them done. So it actually expedited the program by doing it that way.
And that's excellent. That's the reason that we're reducing by $200,000. So I want to jump over Lionville for 1 second and Downingtown Middle and Lionville Middle. So I know that those both opened in '97. Right. And from what I have from my notes, that these were original to the building. So that's 24 years old this year.
Yep.
So we're not...
Their life expectancy is somewhere between 20 and 25 years. So we're getting to the end. They're called, it's a Bryant boiler. They're water tube boilers. If you have a catastrophic failure in one of them, you can retube them, but it costs money and you're shut down while it does it. But we've been monitoring them. The other parts to this type of boiler is there's a lot of linkages and things in the boiler, in the burner part of them, more than just the shell of the boiler. But we've been monitoring them closely, and I'm sure we'll be all right to go another year. But after that, it's getting close. I mean,
Well, we don't want to have to cross our fingers and, kiss the wind here.
Exactly.
Because we have no contingency.
No, that's correct. There's no fatness at all. There's no contingency, so.
So, and to piggyback on that, and that's my concern, is what if one of these has a problem? What is our alternative? Because it takes time to order these and get them in the building. We would just pay costly repairs, or?
Well, that's kind of the angle, or the goal that I wanted here, because certainly it's a mechanical device. You can repair or get it to last another year anyway, but you don't want to get into that threshold that's like in a car. You're putting more into it than it's worth. But I think with minimal care, with minimal cost of care this year, we can get another year out of them. We'll be okay. But after that, you could have to replace the whole burner mechanism on the front, and that's tens of thousands of dollars to repair that, and then the control circuits that go with it, and so on and so forth. So you're getting really close to that threshold, and we always watch that here because we just don't do these because we want to do them. There's only so much money, even when it was better than this, that we try to pick and choose our projects that spend our money wisely and get the most we can out of what we have, but also protect us from falling into that where we're just throwing good money after bad on it. The other project you'll notice that I'm insisting that we do this year is the stem roof. And other years there will, on our 5-year plan, you'll see there's other roofs. We have a very good roofing program here. We know when our roofs are out of warranty, and one thing you don't want is a roof to start leaking, because that's another thing that if you don't take care of it in the early stages, do your preventive maintenance, and most of the projects we do on roofing here now are the cheapest avenue. They don't look it, but a roof is a very expensive asset on the size of our buildings. If they start leaking, your costs go up exponentially, because then you have to tear off the whole existing roof, tear out insulation, sometimes replace decking, and then it's basically starting over with a brand new roof. Most of our roofs and the roof maintenance projects we've been doing here are recoatings, and we can keep doing them over and over and over again, and you can get 100 years out of an existing roof that way. So it's a smart way to go, and it extends a very expensive asset that's on every building that we have.
So when we first had the first rendition of the capital report, my notes indicate that this project for this year was 1 year behind construction. So does that mean now we'll be 2 years behind? And again, like Lionville Middle and Downingtown Middle, you feel comfortable, maybe not confident, but comfortable that we can get another year without any major catastrophes?
Yes, on those projects, yes. When we get to roofing, as we go out the 5-year plan, you don't want to neglect that. When a warranty is gone out, you want to get it done on time to renew your warranty again and get you another 20 years.
So there's no putting off Downingtown Middle, Lionville Middle, or the stem roof after next year?
Yeah, are you talking roofs again? I'm sorry.
Lionville Middle, Downingtown Middle, the boilers.
Boilers, yes.
And then stem the roof.
Yeah, we'll be fine on that. But the roof is the one I insist on, and those chillers for the high schools, because of they are also very expensive. But in today's age, it's not only the chiller itself, it's the refrigerant that's in them that has gotten very expensive because it is totally outlawed for the production of that refrigerant now.
So now I want to ask about Lionville Elementary's boiler, because again, that school was renovated in '97, like the middle schools.
Yeah.
So is that boiler that old or older?
Same age. They're the same age. Yeah,
Okay.
A little bit of different burner mechanisms, and it's a different manufacturer of a boiler, a little bit of a different type, but they are the same age.
So now we have 3 boilers that we're going to hope last another year.
Yeah, and Lionville's middles have been very well maintained. There's a hot water heater there too that we want to get rid of, but we can fix that.
Okay.
Not too much problem. That's a much smaller asset. But we'll be okay on those.
Okay.
But I don't want to go too much more than beyond that.
Okay.
So the nice thing was that this district, probably 8 or 10 years ago, we switched over to straight gas for fuel, which is very good because gas is much easier to maintain, and burning gas actually extends the life of the equipment because it burns cleaner, and it's less cycling in the process of how the gas is used in the boiler, so it helps extend the life a little bit longer in them. So that was a good thing that we did a few years back, that we're totally on gas. We used to switch back and forth from number 2 heating oil to gas, back and forth, but we don't do that anymore because of the way our gas pricing is and how we bid our gas, so it left us stay on a firm rate of gas now for all our buildings.
Thank you, Mr. Lauber. Thank you very much.
Do we have any other questions? Tina?
Yep, I think you're up.
Is it after this, or is it? Okay. All right, so board members, because that's on the agenda to vote, we wanted to make sure you got a good look at that and saw what pieces we're actually cutting to do next year. So in a budget, pretty much personnel and capital are the 2 big areas that we can defer till the next year if we need or want something. And so you saw that. Now, Mr. Mattis and I would like to tag team a little and just go through our preliminary budget. However, this is not on the agenda tonight. This will not happen till next month. So this is just for your eyes on for the first time. So our agenda will be as follows. We'll talk about the budget process, new staff recommended, as I mentioned, budget overview, and then our recommendation to you. So the philosophy, as you know, has changed considerably. It's heavily predicated on every building level supervisor, principal, and every director planning down to the last paperclip what's going to be, what they need for the next year. It's a very systemic approach. It's a very systematic approach. You need to have one full year of doing it so that the next year you can true up your budget and you go line by line, and if something is, you put in 10,000 one year and you only needed 5,000, then the next year if you put in 10,000 again, you're going to get a question about, well, wait a minute, shouldn't that be only 5,000? So it really is a way for that makes the budget process very efficient. However, you need to get through a full year of implementing it. And of course, COVID got in the way last year, and so our budget, we didn't fully implement. COVID's in the way this year. So actually, in order to do this philosophy, we're going to need to get through all of next year as a normal year, and I certainly hope it is a normal year. And then the year after that, we'll be able to compare and really true up the budget. So this will work. It's just taken longer because of COVID. But it does require, or allow, I guess, significant accountability for each area. And I think people like that because they know exactly what's in their budget and what they're getting. But we will true that up. Okay, so the way it works, and this is very labor intensive, but Mr. Mattis and his team and myself and the assistant superintendents, we meet with every director, all the school principals, and go over line by line over everybody's budget. And I'm not sure you'll find another superintendent and business manager that does this, but it's our way of understanding what's in the budget. Every penny we use, it's somebody else's money, so we want to be sure that we're frugal and we're particular about it. And so it's actually been a very good experience. The other bullet on here that we started about 2 years ago was having the director of facilities and the curriculum folks and even technology sometimes and business managers do walking tours in the buildings, because so often we would have one building that had something really, really nice and another building that didn't, and in the same area, and it was because that principal asked for it and that principal didn't. And so now it's much more uniform, so that if someone says they need new carpeting somewhere, a lot of eyes are on that because we're comparing it with the other 15 buildings. Do you really need new carpeting, or does it look pretty good? So we take kind of the subjectivity out of it and get a lot of eyes on it. That's also true for furniture. When we get new furniture, it's not just get whatever you want. Now we have actually a catalog that people choose the furniture that they need, and we look at that furniture before any of it's purchased. So this is considerably different than the way it used to be. But again, there's quite a bit of accountability, and it also really gives for a lot of unification, which is really important in a large district, in any district, but certainly in a large district. This just gives you an idea of the budget meetings that we've attended. There are many. They were often, they were long, they were tedious, but again, I would argue they were very important. The second to the last one there is staffing needs, and that's a difficult one because it's the one where everybody is out with the various people that they supervise, and they come back, cabinet comes back to one meeting, and we talk about any new staffing needs. Then we essentially prioritize that and eliminate some things and push them into next year. So that's always a tough one because all of the needs are well documented. So here's our staffing request for the coming year. For administrative, we just have one new position, and it's only a one-year position. This is a school psychologist, and we were asked before, would it be better just to contract with this person? But actually, we can do it, we can save money and do it more cheaply if we hire the person ourselves. We think we're going to need a psychologist because of this pandemic year and parents' requests possibly for more evaluations. So that's the purpose of the one-year position. Other than that, we have professionals. And as you know, we've been looking at a lot of mental health professionals and people that would help us in that area. So the three top ones on here are all in that vein. There's 3 teachers that will be behavioral support in the elementary. We currently have 2 for all the elementaries. This will allow 5, so each person will only have 2 buildings. That's going to be a big change to help our Tier 2 and Tier 3 students, among many other things. The second thing that we think will be significant for mental health is 2 additional secondary counselors. One of these counselors will be at West and one will be at STEM. Currently, East has 1 more counselor than West, so this would even the larger schools up. And of course, STEM is adding new students. They also have the curriculum leader in their building, which should have a reduced schedule, and so the other will go there. And that will put us more in line with the Association of Counselors recommendation for the number of students per counselor. So that's our second biggest request. Again, we had others, but we cut them off. And the third one is a home and school visitor. We currently have 1. We would really like to have 3, 1 at each level, but this is, again, in a way of being a bit more frugal. We said, let's just ask for 1. And we don't know if we'll split it elementary, secondary, or if we'll do it in a different way. But certainly this will help us, particularly after this pandemic year, when we've had attendance problems, and we suspect we may have some next year. This position will be invaluable. So these top 3 areas are crucial to us next year. The next 2, we always add in teachers we are a growing district, so we think 3 teachers at the elementary. You see I put if needed. 7 teachers at the secondary, I put if needed. Secondary is harder because the certifications are more particular. If we don't need these individuals, we don't hire them. But if we need them, we want to have them in there. Right now, elementary looks like they won't need more teachers, but they always look that way in March and April of the year before. When it gets to be July and August, that changes considerably, and we expect it to in the coming year. For the secondary, we don't really know for sure until the students select their courses and we really map that out. So we'll be able to true both of these up as the year goes on. The final 2 teachers are contingency. We know 1 we will need for autistic, where we believe that we'll need an early intervention program, and which we'll have to locate in one of our elementaries. It'll be one that's less crowded than others, likely maybe a Pickering Valley. We're not sure yet. So that's for certain. And we think we might need another teacher at West for our life skills, and that all depends on number of students. And when we get over the number, by law, you have to have the teacher. So those 2 in there, again, are if needed, and we believe they will be. Other than that, we have 3 health room nurses, and we've talked a lot. Every time we talk about doing anything, it is so much has fallen on our nurses. And so this will help us tremendously just to have more personnel to help with those medical issues that have increased substantially. And the last one in there is a secretary for STEM. They have far fewer help at STEM than the other buildings, and of course they're getting more students. And because of the IB program, there is a significant amount of paperwork. I mean, in the thousands of testings that these secretaries have to do. So that will be particularly helpful. We have no recommendations for supplemental. Okay, let's look at the X's and O's in the budget.
Thank you. Okay, as you can see, we are proposing a budget tonight for next year, 2021-22, with the total expenses of $236.2 million, which is about a 2.3% increase over our current year budget. Since our first draft of the budget, we have increased our revenue projections, so we're being more aggressive with how much revenue we think we will see next year, to the tune of about $2.3 million. We reduced our expenses since our first draft to the tune of $5.5 million. And we just talked about a reduction in our capital program of about $3.8 million. So all these things combined to make our budget tighter and get our revenues more in line with our expenses. As we've talked about in the past, we have had no tax increase for the past 8 years. And we'll show the impact that that has on our schools in the next couple of slides. Long-term, our actual expenditure trend has been outpacing our actual revenues. Since 12-13 fiscal year, our expenditure growth has been about 3.6% per year versus our revenue growth of about 2.4%. So over time, even though we had very robust budgets in the past where revenues have exceeded expenses and we've had surpluses, we've eaten into those surpluses over time as expenses are exceeding revenues. So that's kind of where we are in our process right now, where we're into an area where we're going to start seeing expenses exceeding revenues, and we have deficiencies in our budget. So we need to step in and correct that. And as a matter of fact, in our current year budget, we're projecting somewhere between a $1 to $2 million deficit as we finish out this fiscal year. As we look at the total budget for next year, again, general fund revenues minus general fund expenses minus capital fund expenses, we're looking at a $4.7 million deficit when we consider all those components. Let's turn our attention to revenues now, and we see we're projecting that we are going to increase by $67.5 million in assessed value. And remember that our assessed value is the taxable value of real estate. So if we take $67.5 million in assessed value, multiply that by our current millage rate, that'll drive out about $1.8 million in additional real estate tax revenue to the school district without a tax increase. So that's good news. And that happens because more houses are being built in our school district. Businesses are expanding. So that increases our real estate tax base. As we move through the process of budgeting and look at our revenues, we are proposing a 3% increase in our millage rate from our current 27.182 mils to just under 28 mils. The additional real estate tax revenues that will generate is about $4.5 million. And the impact to the median assessed value home in Downingtown, which is $185,000, is $150. So for each 1% increase in the millage rate, the cash value of that, the cost impact of that to a typical homeowner is $50. So a 3% increase, 3 times $50 is $150. And let me take a second, too, to explain what the median home assessed value is. That's part of Act 1. We know that Act 1 dictates everything that we do with respect to budget development in school districts across the state. It limits how much we can raise taxes. It talks about the timing of how we present budgets to the board and the public, all of that. One of the other things that it is responsible for is the Chester County Department of Assessment has to order all the homes in Downingtown Area School District from the low value to the high value. And then it picks the middle value, which is the median value of homes. For us, that's $185,000. So that's how we come up with that number to determine what the typical tax increase would be, or the impact a tax increase would be on the typical homeowner. We do not have a state budget approved yet. The state has till June 30th to approve their budget, but we anticipate slightly more revenue from the state next year. We think we'll get slightly more money in our IDEA budget, and because we renegotiated our transportation contracts in concert with what the state legislature's wish was that through enactment, that we should see some extra revenue next year in our state transportation subsidies beyond what we budgeted this year. So, it's not going to be a tremendous amount of money, but it's still a little bit more than we had projected for. So that's good news for us. So again, to restate our total revenues for next year, we're projecting, this is general fund revenue, $239.5 million in revenue. We subtract out our expenses for the general fund. We're projecting $236.2 million in revenue. And we also have to subtract out our net capital expenses of about $8 million. Remember, we just talked about our capital expenditures of $9.1 million, but about $1 million of that was for federal funding. So that's why we're showing $8 million here, because that's the Downingtown impact, $8,046,000. So if you take the revenue minus the general fund expenses minus the capital fund expenses, we're looking at a projected deficit of about $4.7 million for next year. This slide takes a look at our 11-year history of tax increases. You can see going back to 2011-12, we had 2 tax increases of under 2%. Then we had a terrific stretch of 8 years with no tax increase. I don't know if any other district in the state, there's 499 school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. I don't know if anybody else has been able to do that. That's fantastic achievement. And you can see we have a proposal for a 3% increase for next year. To continue with that theme, this line chart shows the history of Act 1 index since it started in 2007-2008 fiscal year. And again, remember that the Act 1 base index is the limit for our limit for what we can raise real estate taxes year to year. Now, this is the base index. There's also some exceptions for special education costs and perhaps state retirement costs if it happens to exceed the inflation index that particular year. So you see the history there, and at the far right, you see 3% for the 21-22 school year, so that's why we're at 3%. And the yellow lines in the middle there, that's the 8 years where we didn't have a tax increase. So what we did is said, if we would have increased taxes those 8 years to the Act 1 base index, 1.7% in 2012-13, and then up through, I'm having a hard time reading that, 2.8%, 2.6% out into the current year. The cumulative impact of that is about $4,000. So that means we have, over that 8-year period, we saved a typical homeowner in Downingtown about $4,000 in real estate taxes. So that's substantial. That's a good feat. And that comes through hard work in managing the budget and good board governance to make that happen, all at the same time delivering a quality product. So that talks about value to the taxpayers. The other trend that's happening, while we had an 8-year of no tax increase, we had other types of inflationary impacts. We had a student enrollment increase for the past 10 years that's about 11%, 10 or 11% range. So that's the orange bars. That looks back in time. So obviously that creates upward inflationary pressure within our school district budget. We're hiring more teachers. We're buying more textbooks, more computers. We're expanding Euclid Hills Elementary. We're expanding the STEM Academy. So all that is upward inflationary pressure. And again, remember, we held our taxes solid for eight consecutive years. The pink pyramids reflect what we are projecting as our future enrollment, which should grow at about 6%, according to our demographic report that Future Think put together for us last year. So again, that's upward pressure. And then you just have general economic upward inflationary pressure of 14%, which is the consumer price index for the Philadelphia area. This slide looks at Downingtown efficiency. So the blue bars show the current millage rate for every school district in Chester County, with the highlight of the gold bar for Downingtown area school district. So you can see that we are in the bottom third of the county, which is a good thing for the millage level or the millage rates for a school district. So millage rate is an indicator of tax burden on the community. So we have 3 school districts that have a lower millage rate than we do. So the millage rate is associated with the scale on the left side of the screen, which is in blue, and we're going to layer in the red line, which is tuition rates, and that's associated with the scale on the right side of the screen. You can see that Downingtown's tuition rate is about $12,000 per year. And the tuition rate is a calculation that the Pennsylvania Department of Education puts together each year. And it looks at what are the educational costs to educate a student each year. It doesn't include transportation expenses. It doesn't include principal and interest payments on debt. It's more or less focused on curriculum, teaching, teachers in a classroom, those types of things. So our cost is about $12,000 a year, which is one of the lower costs of education in the county. So we have low taxes with a millage rate that's in the bottom third of the county. We have a low cost of education, and we have an excellent education. So that gives you good value. So if we compare ourselves to the other school districts that have a lower millage rate than we do, it's kind of a head scratcher because we can see that they're spending more per student than we are, but yet they have a lower millage rate. So how's that possible? And that's because, these school districts have a higher commercial real estate value than Downingtown. We have pretty much a bedroom community. We have some businesses, some commercial properties, but for the most part, we're a bedroom community. So therefore, each mill of real estate tax for the bottom 3 millage rate school districts brings in a lot more money than it does in Downingtown. So therefore, they can spend at a higher rate and also have a less of a tax burden on their homeowners as well. And just to kind of complete the cycle here, because if we're looking at roughly a spend of $12,000 a year for Downingtown, and if we look at Westchester, they're about $13,700 per child, that's a $1,700 difference. Doesn't sound like a lot, but that's per student. You take $1,700 times 13,000 students in Downingtown, that comes out to be about $23 million. So we would have to take next year's budget and increase it by about $23 million to equal the spending rate that Westchester currently has. So that's a big impact. Talks about the value in Downingtown. This slide shows us the tax increases since 2012-2013 fiscal year. And we're in the best spot, bottom left-hand corner. So we haven't had a tax increase. That's a good thing. And even if we plug in a 3% tax increase for next year, we're still in a very good position within the county. We look at expenditure growth. This is our budgeted expenditure growth over time. You can see back in 2007, 2008, we had some higher expenses associated again with student growth. But in the past 10 years, we've balanced that out, looking at somewhere between 3 to 2.5% increases each year. Again, that comes down to the hard work that Dr. Lenardi was talking about, is looking at every line item in the budget and making sure it's needed, and it's a need, not a want. And that goes back to the board too for oversight. So that's just been a great tradition here in Downingtown Area School District.
All right, let me land this plane. Here's the administrative recommendation and our final slide. For 21-22, we are recommending a 3% tax increase. This will help us going forward, not only because we haven't had a tax increase for 8 years, but also as we look forward to a 5-6 center and all-day kindergarten. I just wanted to put that in there to say we are looking for that in our near future. But for this year, it's really just to keep us whole in terms of a deficit, so that we're not deficit spending. This is still below the maximum that we could have gone up, which would have been 3.6. That would have been Act 1 index plus exceptions. So we're recommending 3%. Our general fund budget, as Mr. Mattis said, $236.2 million. Our capital fund budget, we reduced now to 9.1, and of course that'll be $1 million less because of grant money used. And we said, I just want to say again that we are confident, Mr. Lawver is confident, I should say, that deferring capital and maintaining our programs will be fine. So the final 2 pieces of this, again, board members doing nothing tonight in terms of a vote, but we would need to approve the proposed budget at our committee of the whole meeting April 7th. Now that's a little unorthodox, but we need 30 days between the 2 votes. So we'll have to make that a voting meeting for this one item, and then the rest of the meeting will be normal, and then we'll approve the final budget May 12th. And that's really terrific because May 12th gives us great time to start purchasing and interviewing and just beginning the process and beating some of the other schools that may be getting some of those prime positions. So this completes our budget presentation, and we're certainly happy to take any questions.
Thank you, President Bertoni. First, I want to thank the administration for prioritizing mental health. I know that the board has been talking about mental health, the community has been asking for mental health, and in the middle of a pandemic, I really appreciate how much that was prioritized. My second question is about the assessed value. Can we explain assessed versus that's not the value of the house, that's the assessed value, and can you also explain what the what the assessed value equates to in-house value. Do you know what that would be for people sitting at home? Trying to think about what that tax increase is for them.
Yes, so good point. An assessed value is the taxable value of real estate, and that is determined by Chester County. Their Board of Assessment Appeals determines the taxable value of every piece of real estate in the county. So whether it be a home, a farm, a business, commercial, industrial property, County of Chester determines what that level is. And currently, it's about 50% of the market value. So if you look at the market, well, if you look at the recent sale of, let's say, a house, and it sold for $300,000, then the assessed value should be close to about $150,000, the taxable value of that. And it's the assessed value times the millage rate that determines the tax bill, not the market value.
Perfect, thank you.
And when was the last time Chester County reassessed?
I think it was around 1997. Don't
Right.
quote me on that, but it's been a little while.
So do they, when a house is sold, do they then automatically, is that reassessment in or no? If that house sold for $200,000 20 years ago, it's still $200,000?
Correct. In Pennsylvania, that's considered a spot reassessment. So we can't, there's some value to maybe doing that type of, but we're not permitted to change the assessed value or the taxable value of a house based on its immediate sale. We could appeal it and say, well, what happened?
No,
Was
I
an
was
addition put on?
just making the point that it's from an assessment 20 years ago, whatever. What did you say? I'm sorry.
1997, I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah, which isn't too bad. There are many counties out in Pennsylvania that haven't reassessed their properties since the 70s.
Any other questions? Director Bluss.
Yes, thank you. Could you go on and explain a little bit about homeschool visitor? I know we currently have one, and she's been doing a yeoman's job, but I don't believe that particular title there indicates how much they are really doing.
Yeah, that's right. So, Ms. Dennis, how about if you do that? Because she works with them day in and day out.
Thank you.
Sure. So our home and school officers are working with school buildings, particularly with students who are accruing illegal absences. So she's monitoring attendance across the building. She's also supporting the attendance letters that go home to families as they're accruing different amounts of illegal absences. Once they hit a certain point, we're required to offer a SATE meeting, which is a student attendance improvement plan. So we meet with families. We put interventions in place for students to improve their attendance. If those things don't work, there's other mechanisms that we use. We can refer students to truancy prevention programs, so she plays a big role in interfacing with those agencies that support us in that action. So she's attending a lot of meetings. She's going to IEP meetings for our special education students. She's also our homelessness liaison, so she's working with our families that are experiencing homelessness, making sure they have supports that they need, making sure students are getting to school. She works with our transportation department to make sure transportation's set up for those students. So she's really running a gamut of a lot of things and really supporting all 16 buildings in getting students to school, making sure students are attending, and supporting those that are struggling.
With 13,000 students, that's a huge job. Thank you.
And can I ask that you consider, I know when the job was first talked about, that the hours not be a traditional day, that they not, so that if parents are working, a child's truant, you go to the house during the day, nobody's home, you don't get anywhere. So perhaps we consider just making that part of the job description.
Sure, thank you.
Can you speak towards potential staffing for the Downingtown Cyber Academy?
I'm sorry?
Can you please speak towards potential staffing for the Downingtown Cyber Academy next year?
The Downtown Cyber Academy, well, any additional staffing, you mean?
Correct.
So the 3 teachers, the 10 teachers up there will be used for whatever is needed. So, and that's really why I'm mainly afraid to remove them, because it could be elementary, it could be DCA, and that's also true for secondary. So we just don't know until we ask parents, are you coming to Downingtown Cyber Academy? Are you coming back in person? And then when we know those answers, we get an idea of where we need the people. So really, we differentiated this 3 elementary, 7 secondary at our best estimates, but it's really 10 teachers to be put wherever we need to, if we need to do it.
Dr. McNeil?
So just a brief follow-up in Director Grabb's comment. Now, I only have 1 year to base this on, but when we approve, just let's suppose we approve hiring these teachers on an if-needed basis. I'm not sure how the rest of the board feels, but I would be interested in knowing in September which teachers were hired and where they were hired, so we have a sense of where we were more, where these teachers were most needed. So if it is DCA and that's growing, then we would know that instead of at an elementary building, this one teacher needed to be hired at DCA. In other words, follow up from being approved to actually hiring and putting that personnel in place.
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
And Dr. McNeil, on the personnel reports, they should say the name and new hire and where they're going to be. So I know you wouldn't maybe necessarily keep,
Well,
it
that
would be
leaves
nice
it
to
up
have
to
a
me
full
to
report in
connect the dots, you know?
September.
Yeah.
It would be nice to have a full report in September, but if you want to keep track as we go along, you could find the information on the personnel sheet. Vice President Britton?
I also wanted to follow up on Director Graves' question. I know we don't know what's going to happen next year, but certainly if there is more students in DCA, I'm wondering if we could maybe have a contingency for some more supports there, maybe in guidance, or I don't think they currently have a guidance counselor.
Well, as you recall, we had many more positions that we wanted, but we decreased it to what we thought was the most critically needed. So if you're asking us to put more positions back in, that would have to be come from the board. We're comfortable with this in the coming year based on the budget that we have. But I love the idea. I want to say that.
The other thing I think we need to consider is we do need to see where the numbers fall out.
Sure.
Because if we lose a number of students from one school, we may lose a teacher that, because it's cyber, we don't have to add a teacher the way they split out, that we may be able to substitute one for another depending on what the numbers.
Well, and we did that this year quite a bit.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
So,
and I don't mean, I meant contingency for it, because
but they're budgeting for contingencies. So.
I know, but not for a guidance counselor in DCA.
But it could be a teacher. It could be one of.
So here's the thing, though. As a board, we just made a motion, and it was approved, right, to put 66% of our kids into school. And there's still the other, 30, whatever, 4%, who now next year might not return to school. So if we don't have a plan, I'd just like to see that we have something in contingency for the other third of students.
Don't the Cyber Academy students use their homeschools counselor?
No.
Yes?
Who's talking?
So I think,
Okay.
sorry,
I'm sorry.
DCA students, they use their home school counselor, like their wherever they would go if they weren't going to cyber, correct? Okay. So we wouldn't hire a dedicated Cyber Academy.
Unless they have 400 and some students. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, not yet, we would. There
Not
may be a
yet,
time
yeah.
when we do, but we're not looking at that for next year.
I think we have to see the numbers. Go ahead, Director Graham.
I'm going to, agree with Director Britton, that it would be really helpful to have it in contingency. While in theory, yes, they could use their homeschool counselor, especially in the elementary level, the MTSS courses are via class. So the DCA students aren't placed in a class in their home school, so they don't get invited to the MTSS Zoom. So we're here talking about mental health and how it's great that we're adding mental health to this budget, but it would be remiss to exclude the potential of mental health support for our virtual students also.
So are you suggesting that we add I'm guessing here, $70,000, $80,000 position in contingency and run the risk of running another $100,000 behind? Because no, I'm not saying you, I'm saying to the board.
Oh, yeah.
I'm looking at you, Dr. Lenardi, but I'm talking to the board. I apologize. So, because we're talking about passing a preliminary budget that will raise approximately $4.5 million, but we're still going to spend an increase of $4.7 million. So we're really tight already. So, contingency sounds nice, and we can certainly put it in there, but I think the board needs to understand anything we add now, unless we want to go back and cut something, is going to add to the deficit of our tax base. Or do we can't take exceptions now because we already said we wouldn't. So 3% is it for this year.
Right.
So
President Bertoni, may I just add, we recently hired a principal of the Downingtown Cyber Academy. She hasn't been in that position very long. I just wonder if maybe this is something that Dr. Lenardi might talk with her about, to take a look at the Cyber Academy and just maybe develop a plan for a more robust program. Right now, we really don't have a robust program.
Well, it's more robust than most, I will say that, because other districts are asking us, can they have our plan so they can implement what we're doing? But to your point, I have already had that conversation with her, and she would like to really ramp up a DCA. And one of the things we'd like to do is send a survey out to parents as we approach to the end of the year and say, give us feedback, just like that kind of feedback, so we can plan better for next year. So we expect to do that. I don't really think we have to put money in the budget. We do have one contingency in the business office budget for anything that should come up that we didn't expect. And if we really wanted to, we could take money from there and get another position. But I hesitate to say that out loud because we generally don't use that money unless it's imperative.
And I was just trying to point out that we have 10 teachers in contingency, but they could be a guidance counselor.
Sure,
I mean, the money is there, so it's a misnomer to say that it's not there. So I think the board's request is that we seriously look at it and consider if that's one of the positions we might like to use some of this.
I'd like to clarify what I'm trying to say. I think I did a poor example and didn't communicate well. What I'm trying to say is, as we go forward, I'd like to make sure that there's if we have a lot of children going over to that model next year, if that's I don't even know, it's so early on, that there's money to provide for that program. That's all.
Thank you, Vice President Britton, and I just want to be careful this year that we don't fall into the trap we did last year. Once we approve the budget, it's very difficult to add people specific. So long as we have enough in contingency, I am comfortable that administration will do their best to get the right people on the bus.
Yeah, I am too, actually, and I think that the way we've positioned this budget, we'll have a few years to work our way out of this, but we'll and get on the upside of our revenues. But we have a plan to do that, and I have every confidence that we'll do it.
Thank you.
Unless anybody else?
Go
ahead.
And if things aren't going well with counseling for DCA students, I guess maybe what we need to consider is, do we want dedicated counselors for the DCA, or would it be better to have more counselors for the home schools and figure out a way to do better when it comes to providing for DCA? I don't know what would be a better plan, because I don't think one counselor for the DCA would be enough.
Right. Right, that's a great point, and we'll investigate that, and we'll get feedback from those in it, and we'll put a plan together.
Director Kang, did you have a?
Go ahead, I'll clean up.
Dr. Lenardi, the 3 teachers that are behavior support in the elementary level, will they, how will they be supporting the guidance counselors? And maybe because they are supporting the guidance counselors in ways that obviously that position hasn't been there before, those guidance counselors might have a little bit more time to be assigned to like a DCA grade level.
That's part of our overall plan, for sure. Ms. Dennis?
Sure. So the behavior specialists, right now, our school counselors are really the main support for MTSS behavioral support for students in regular education. So a lot of times they're helping to create behavior intervention plans through regular education, coaching with teachers, helping them implement those plans. We try to conduct functional behavior assessments at the reg ed level to help us pinpoint areas of concern to help students find replacement behaviors. So these behavior specialists would be able to take a lot of that off their plate, as well as work with tier 2 groups that are experiencing externalized behaviors to help them build some instruction, build some replacement behaviors, so that hopefully our students increase those skills. We don't need to identify them as special education students down the road.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess it's me. Good. I have a few things. First, on this note with the staffing issues, I think it would be helpful for all of us, because whenever we talk about staffing, we don't have anything to go by. I always like to get a track record. So perhaps we could put something together for the board of maybe 5 years in the past of how many staff and administration we've had and how much that's increased over the years. We should know those numbers just so we can visualize when we're adding these positions, well, where have we been coming from? Is that something we could do?
Absolutely.
Okay. So thank you for the presentation. I have a few concerns. I know that $150 on average doesn't sound like much. I would like to point out that it's not, the $5.5 million decrease of the budget or cut from the budget was not, we're not cutting $5.5 million from the budget. We're actually taking $5.5 million from an increase that was proposed to us last month. So for the public, we're not cutting the budget here at all. In other areas of revenue that we get, it's not just the assessed value. It is the real estate transfer tax, which actually ended up being very healthy, and the earned income tax, among a lot of other things. So we've had significant revenue growth in the district. In a year of a pandemic, when we have heard stories of people still struggling, and we also have a lot of folks out there who don't think they've gotten value this particular year for their tax dollars. I think we should rethink this. I also have some questions about the numbers. I was looking back at our expenditures over the last several years, and in 2016, between 2016 and 17, we added $5 million in expenditures, $4 million the next year, $5 million in 2019, and $4 million in 19 to 20. And this year, we're adding 7. So we're going up a little bit. Your projections that we got in the agenda this week show that we're pretty sure that we're going to end up with expenditures of $223 million by June 30th of this year, just 3.5 months from now. But this budget is $236 million in expenditures. That's a $13 million increase.
Yes, it is. And most of it is contractual. You know, we're talking about salaries and benefits growth, new positions growth. Hopefully, we will have some savings as we manage the budget, because just because it's in the budget doesn't mean we spend the money.
Correct.
So that's key. So our jobs as administrator and board oversight is to manage the budget. So hopefully we can save some money, and we're not going to have a $4.7 million deficit. It'll be closer to zero.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. I want to point out that if we do spend all that money, that's almost a 6% expenditure increase year over year, not 2.3, I think was what. And I understand that was a budgeted increase, not an actual, but we have to deal with actuals. And by the way, my figures here do not include the capital budget. I'm just keeping that separate just for make it easier for apples to apples. And I know that we get a lot of people who say that we've been starving the district. First of all, we are a district who, other districts have raised taxes, but that's because they were running actual deficits. We have done a fantastic job here with the business office, previous boards, and the fact that we've been lucky with the earned income tax, with the fact that people want to come here. So we get a lot of real estate transfer tax, we have development. We have been lucky over those 8 years. We were not starving the district. In 2013, the last year that we did a tax increase, our expenditures were, and excuse me for a second, I have lots of notes here, 172.5 million, 8 years ago. In 2020, 3.5 months from now, we expect that to be 223 million. That's a $51 million year-over-year increase to our spending. And it's not penny pinching because we gave great education to thousands of students in that time. And we continue to be one of the top districts in Chester County, in Pennsylvania, and yes, even in the United States. Just repeat that. We spent $172.5 million in expenditures in 2013, just 8 years ago. $223.5 million this year. That's $51 million year over year that we spend on students. I think the students need to have the best education. We need to provide that for them. But I think we need to really look at this budget. We need to understand where our staffing needs are and know how much in staffing we've increased and know what the actual numbers are for the budget. I just don't think this is a good year to raise taxes. Some of the things that we're looking to do, the 5-6 center, all-day kindergarten, we're looking at tax increases in some of the proposals that are showing over the next 5 years, a 21% aggregate tax increase to fund those things. I think we need a strategic plan as well. The model of education may have changed. Our demographics, the student growth is slowing down, but we're down students where we were supposed to be up in a pandemic year. I think we should be looking at all of those things and really deciding what the district needs going forward. I don't think we need a tax increase this year, even with the proposed professional staffing requests. We have built up a large surplus over the years, and again, we have not been dipping into deficits. We haven't been deficit spending. So I think we should, for this year at least, we should do a top to bottom review. And I think we should also, if we have to dip into savings, we dip into savings. That's what it's there for, but I think this is not the year to be raising taxes on Downingtown residents.
We're not voting till committee of the whole, right? Does anyone else have any questions for tonight?
I'd just like to echo Director Kring's suggestion of a strategic plan, because in addition to full-day kindergarten, a 5-6 center, I know some time ago Director Lawver gave us a synopsis of the possibility of adding to some buildings and not others. Tonight, we brought up the recommendation that Beaver Creek needs some immediate attention. So we have a DCA that we're asking be more robust and more robust than it is currently. So all of that is planning. We can't do that all at one time. So what does that look like? And what do we prioritize as a board? Because that's what we need to do, put priorities on things so that we can have them happen and not just talk about them, as we've talked about full-day kindergarten since 2010.
So I've yet to hear a suggestion about doing any work at Beaver Creek Elementary. I'm not sure where that budget-wise falls. And I just want to be clear that I personally did not say that I wanted to make DCA more robust. I'm saying if children go there, we have to make plans for it. That's all I said. This is a lot to chew on, and I thank the administration for going through this length. I'm one of the people that for a long time felt like we were starving this district, mental health wise. We have a lack of personnel, in my opinion. And for a long time, I've been saying things like that. So I'm going to say it again. And I'm also going to say that I might be an unpopular person, but I do like to save for rainy days. And I think it's somewhat irresponsible to keep spending money out of our general fund to pay for our groceries. So if I ever have to put a tax increase on my neighbors, I'd like to make sure that we're not creating giant deficits down the road. 8 years is a good run, and I hope that as we go forward, we all think very carefully about what we do to future boards when we take a hard line and don't think thoughtfully about our choices. So thank you.
And I would just like to follow up, Director Kring, I'll give you the floor in a minute. You know, we have listed there the 5, 6, and possible all-day kindergarten, but we also cannot lose sight of the fact that our high schools this year during a pandemic went up 130 students, and a vast majority of them at Downingtown West. And we have plans, we've had plans drawn to consider some kind of a space for them. And we need to, while we're thinking about priorities, we've got to first take care of the students we already have. And to your point of some of the things at Beaver Creek, and so it all has to go into our list of priorities.
Agreed, and I'd just like to point out that we are not deficit spending the general fund, the operating budget. I'm assuming that's what we're referencing.
I'm sorry, did I call it the wrong fund?
No, it's fine, but we have not been dipping into the savings. So we have had.
We spent $3 million out of it last year, I'm pretty sure.
No, we had a surplus.
We used it, but we did take money out to do capital.
It's
You
but it's
can't
still
keep spending money out of that fund. If that's the savings account, that's not meant to balance your budget on. I'm sorry, I fundamentally disagree with the use of that money.
Should we move on to reports? Are our students still with us? I don't blame you if you're not. Aren't you glad you took this job during a pandemic year? Who's up first? Bevan, are you going first, or? I see you on the screen. Oh, wait a minute, we can't hear you.
Am I good?
You're good now. This is, you're getting close to the end. Pretty soon you're going to be getting out of Dodge. Are you going to tell us where you're going?
Yep, I'll be attending United States Air Force Academy starting in June.
Thank you, sir. I was waiting to hear that. That's wonderful. Congratulations.
I cannot wait. Well, this is the report for Downingtown West. Congratulations to 2 West students who received Aspirations in Computing Awards from the National Center for Women and Information Technology. Senior Maya Blackburn received a National Certificate of Distinction, and junior Amanda Cleary was awarded an Affiliate Honorable Mention. In addition, computer science teacher Dr. Spears received an Affiliate Honorable Mention award. The Downingtown West mock trial team concluded its competition season last week with the PA Bar Association tournament. The plaintiff side received a favorable verdict in the semifinal round, but lost a close trial in the county finals. Randy Eduardo swept the Best Witness Awards, with Luke Ing and Bevan Watson receiving Best Advocate honors. Congratulations to the team for the second place regional finish, the best in club history. Last month, the Stage West Drama Club hosted their final production of the year, a rendition of Mike McCafferty's Future Trend Missions. The virtual play featured 6 different scenes of comedy and drama. Thank you to all the community members and students who tuned in. On February 23rd and 24th, the counseling departments partnered with Revolution Prep to host a virtual college fair. The 2-day event offered students and parents the opportunity to interface with representatives from a plethora of colleges, vocational schools, and military branches. The event was successful, with families from all grade levels tuning in. Finally, congratulations to Downingtown West track and field athlete and STEM senior Declan Reimer for setting a new school record in the 3,000-meter run. Declan covered 7.5 laps in 8 minutes, 43.2 seconds. And that's all for me.
I can go next. This is the report for Downingtown STEM Academy. Good evening. All 194 juniors attended the 8th annual career fair last Thursday, March 4th. 28 company partners joined Zoom and engaged with sessions of 3 to 4 students to introduce themselves, introduce their companies, and the virtual program they will be offering. Each student had the opportunity to choose with 3 companies to speak with. Companies who participated included Bentley Systems, West Pharmaceutical Services, Comcast, Exelon, and Lockheed Martin, and much more, and many more. Though this was the first time that students were not in the NOCO, through Zoom, students were still able to show their professionalism learned in their MEA soft skills sessions, and by all accounts, made a great impression on the business representatives who participated. The next step for each student is to schedule individual Zoom meetings with Mrs. Boardman to discuss their experience and make their choices. All students will send introductory emails to their chosen company and participate in their experience in the summer of 2021. Submission of the IB assessments is currently in progress for STEM seniors. Once completed in early April, 4,000 IB assessment documents, including the internal and external assessments, extended essays, comment sheets, and student planning forms will be submitted. This will also include the submission of over 1,400 individual course predicted grades. These submissions will be included in the students' official IB scores because we are taking the non-examination route this year. The academic team had semifinals at the CCIU's academic competition at the end of February. Varsity competed on February 23rd, and then junior varsity, who were in first place overall, competed on March 2nd. Congratulations to both varsity and junior varsity. On February 6th, in the weeks leading up to it, 73 STEM students participated in the PATSA Region 5 Leadership Conference. 40 teams or individuals placed and qualified for the state conference in April. The first place groups and individuals are as follows. From the architecture design category, the winning group was Max Johnson, Sean Herman, Sia Siegel, Mitchell Goldman, Azra Sriram, and Miranda Corbo. For the digital video production category, the winner was Stephen Wang. For future technology and engineering teacher, the category, the winner was Raj Patel. For geospatial technology, Mahathi Molina, Irene Abraham, and Shannon Shi were the winners. For prepared presentation, the winner was Raj Patel. In promotional design, the winner was Vibha Guru. And finally, in software development, the winners were Maria Thomas and Manuel Thomas, who placed first place. Congratulations to all of the students that competed. Thank you.
I'll go next. This is a report for Downingtown East. Good evening. On Saturday, February 27th, Downingtown East chapter of Model UN participated in Engage Model United Nations with award-winning performances by Yash Rajapal, Lucas Shannon, Yaja Gupta, and Rishabh Srinivasan. On February 25th, the coaches of the Downingtown East hosted a socially distanced polar pop event. Each athletes team donated a coach to have cold water balloons popped over their heads in solidarity to raise money for the unified sports at Downingtown East High School. This event was a part of Cool Schools Challenge run by Special Olympics of Pennsylvania. The proceeds go towards funding unified sports, specifically Bashi and Heptathlon team at Downingtown East High School. Unified sports consists of partnering neurotypical and neurodiverse athletes to train and compete together as teammates. Last year, Downingtown East High School's Bashi team qualified for the state championship in Hershey, PA. All in all, 13 coaches, 10 athlete teams, Hype Club alumni, students, and staff raised over $5,234 participating in Polar Pop Challenge, thus making Downingtown East High School athletes and coaches second in the state of Pennsylvania to raise money for unified teams. John Carusola, a sophomore, along with 11 other students from varying districts, in partnership with Junior Achievement, built a company that sells a phone cleansing product, Screen Spritz. Downingtown East, West, and STEM counseling departments held their first ever DASD virtual college fair on February 23rd and 24th. This two-night event provided all 9th through 12th graders and their families an opportunity to interact with over 65 colleges, technical schools, and military representatives. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll see you next month. Moving on. Student Life Report, Director Blust.
Just as a reminder, Student Life meets every other month. Our next Student Life meeting is scheduled for later this month, March 18th, and I will report out during our April meeting. Thank you, President Bertoni.
Cultural Equity Report, Director Wisdom.
Thank you, President Bertoni. The Cultural Equity Task Force met on Thursday, February 25th. We worked on our mission statement and listened to updates from all of our subcommittees. Some of the highlights from the subcommittees are evaluating equity in student intervention, standards of interaction and accountability, student and community outreach, including events such as job fairs and training opportunities for parents. And the full minutes are available on the website if anyone is interested. There is a lot of work to be done, and all of our members are working hard and certainly up to the task. We are already 1/3 of the way through Women's History Month, and I hope you have had an opportunity to see some of the excellent offerings on the DASD website and also on Instagram and Twitter. Our handle is DASD Celebrates WHM. Women's History Month was made official in 1987. Up until then, and even now, women march forward, claiming their rights along the way. A Google search of a timeline of women's rights will take you on a journey of how extensive the fight has been to get the most basic rights we take for granted today. But more importantly, we'll invoke pride in how far we have come as a society and what we still need to accomplish. This year continues on the theme of women's right to vote. That right was granted in 1920, but even after that, women were not treated equally. I feel I would be remiss in not honoring the late, great Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Throughout her career, her efforts in the fight against gender discrimination and for gender equality, and her involvement in landmark cases moving women's rights forward is an impressive part of her legacy. The Cultural Equity Task Force strives to draw attention to inequity in all areas of our society, not through blame and ridicule, but by lifting up and drawing attention to all people. To make the way that a person lives their life a part of a greater accepted norm, that is living together and not just tolerating our differences, but celebrating them as the aspect that makes our world the beautiful and diverse place that it is. Our next meeting will take place on Thursday, March 25th. Remember, everyone is welcome to join the Cultural Equity Task Force. Visit Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion on DASD.org and click on the Cultural Equity Task Force. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Wisdom. Director Kring, DARK, and the Intermediate Unit.
Thank you, President Bertoni. The Downingtown Area Recreation Consortium did meet in February virtually. Instead of giving you the meeting minutes, I'll talk a little bit about the newsletter that you can get at dark.info. First, save the date. DARK is excited to announce our first golf tournament event ever to raise funds to support DARK's community programming. We are looking forward to hosting the event at the Honeybrook Golf Club on Monday, May 17th. We'll begin with an 8:30 a.m. shotgun start and lunch afterwards. The entry fee is $130 per player, and event sponsorship opportunities are available. I urge everyone to get a foursome together and get out there. Also, summer camp. In a year where life has been turned upside down and we find a new normal around every corner, we think children and families should have something fun to look forward to this summer. At camp, children can make new friends, develop their social skills, try new things, learn new skills, or deepen and expand existing ones. At DARK's playground camps, adventure camps, and many of our specialty camps, children spend hours in a wide variety of activities. Just to give you a little overview, the playground camps are low-cost, half-day playground camps located at 3 of our elementary schools, to be determined where that's going to be. The camp is for preschool ages 3 to 4 and 5 to 6, and elementary students age 7 to 11. Each themed week is built around games, art and crafts, sports, and more. These are offered Monday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The Adventure Day camps are for elementary ages 7 to 11 or middle school ages 11 to 13. Students to our unique camp where we take a different trip each day with one major trip each week. They are offered Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. with extended care available. They also offer many specialty and sports camp, including crafty chef cooking camps, engineering for kids camps, nature camps, tennis camps, junior golf camps, and a lot more. We will have a dark meeting, board meeting this month. It's yet to be scheduled. Moving on to CCIU. The CCIU Board of Directors, the Chester County Intermediate Board of Directors held its monthly meeting on Wednesday, February 17th, virtually. Mr. Joe Lubitsky, Director of Administrative Services, reviewed in a first reading the draft 2021-22 core occupational education and categorical budgets and answered questions. Key points in the presentation were as follows: no increase in proposed core budget contributions, no increase in occupational education tuition rate, and the goal for the marketplace program prices for Chester County school districts is to be limited to the Act 1 index of 3.0%. Categorical budgets do not require local school district funds and represent alternative sources of revenue to deliver services. In finance, the CCIU Board of Directors considered in the first reading the 21-22 core and occupational education budgets in the total amount of $59,466,531. The next CCIU Board of Directors meeting will be held on Wednesday, March 17th at 7:30 p.m., either virtually or at the Technical College High School at Penix Bridge campus, pending the governor's orders. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Kring. The Ed Foundation and the legislative report, Director Gibson.
Thank you, President Bertoni. The Ed Foundation met on Tuesday, March 9th, virtually at 5 p.m. They are, the Harlem Wizards event for this year has been canceled. It's been moved tentatively to March 24th, 2022. They are targeting a June date for the Spring Donors Breakfast. The theme will be the Downingtown Community Education Foundation, past, present, and future. One of the main topics will be the grant recipients, the Innovation Lab as an example of the present, and the Narwhal Nature Center as an example of the future. Teacher grants, the mobile library has been approved for the summer. DCEF is ordering books that have not yet been donated. The spring grant deadline has been moved from March 26th to May 21st to allow teachers time to focus on the return back to in-person school. The spring session for DCEF programs will be April 12th to May 27th. They are offering 17 in-person classes and 5 virtual. Registration is now open. They are doing their 3-week summer sessions. They are 1 week long. It will be 1 week in June and 2 in July. Registration for that will start on March 15th. They are also looking to have kindergarten jumpstart offered in all 10 elementary schools, and they're in discussions with Downingtown about partnering for other programs over the summer. The next meeting will be on April 13th at 5 p.m. The Chester County School Board Legislative Council met on February 24th at 6 p.m. It was also virtual, as they all are. They discussed a resolution support for all districts in Chester County supporting prioritizing the vaccine for teachers. In the legislative update, they talked about the voucher co-sponsorship memo, which is sponsored by Senator Scott Martin. He is the Senate Education Chair, which allows education opportunity for Pennsylvania's most vulnerable students, and tax credit scholarship programs, charter school reform. They also discussed the U.S. Department of Education assessment waiver, which would allow schools more flexibility in when to administer the standardized testing. They could be offered in fall or spring or fall of 2021. They also said that the test would not be used for critical data such as funding and improvement plans. They discussed the Act 1 of 2021, the COVID relief federal funding, where it's about $197 million that'll go to the governors, which will be spread out to various public schools. None of them are public schools. It's all going to career and technical schools, community colleges, residential rehabilitation institutions, and state colleges. It's everybody who did not get it before. They discussed the governor's budget, which is $1.3 billion proposed increase to the basic education fund. And the charter school reform policy. The next meeting will be on March 24th at 6:30, and it will be virtual.
Thank you, Director Gibson. Communities That Care, Vice President Britton.
Thank you, President Bertone. CTC has begun Sage Straight professional development this week for K through 12 prevention specialists. I'm really excited to see this program rolled out in our schools. And last year, before the pandemic, our board endeavored to take this program to improve board communication. Well, this past month, our board finally had the training after putting it off in favor of more pressing issues like pandemic planning. I'm looking forward to our board using our new learned skills through Sage Straight and enjoyed our time together in that training. Thank you, board. In other news, CTC will be partnering with DASD to support 2 upcoming parent community programs on diversity. More to come on that. Hype clubs have been sharing positive messages on their social media programs and pages. Finally, on March 9th, CTC and Downingtown Area School District hosted a parent speaker program called Supporting Kids and Reducing Their Stress and Ours. There were over 200 registrants. I've heard really good things about this about this program, and that concludes my report.
Thank you, Vice President Britton. Wellness Committee, Director Graham.
Thank you, President Bertone. In February, the 5 wellness subcommittees met to continue discussing and identifying top priorities in the areas of substance use prevention, mental health and social emotional learning, wellness policy, staff wellness, and parent engagement. Highlights from this meeting will be shared at the next board meeting. The next meeting is scheduled for March 15th, and the long-awaited Youth Truth district-wide survey is planned for June. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Is there any old business? Is there anything a board member would like to pull from the consent agenda?
I do have one question. I don't necessarily want to be told that the curriculum, is that above our minimus or an action item like 1,000?
No.
I never heard of
We went back and forth between 20 and 25. I'm not, it's 25, right? Yeah, it's 25,000, so I think we're okay. Any other? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Moving on to the action agenda, curriculum report. Director Blust.
Curriculum report. There is one item, request approval of a settlement agreement and release with the parents of a DSD student. The total cost is $30,750. The contract date is 3/11/21 to 6/15/23.
Do I have a?
Second.
Second? Thank you. Any, call the vote, please?
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes. Finance report, Director McNeil.
Thank you, President Bertoni. Number one, request approval of the revised 2021-2022 capital budget.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do you offhand, Dr. McNeil, know the amount? Just to put that in the minutes? Or Mr. Mattis?
So it's 8 million? Not 9 with the federal, which number do you?
Yeah, it's going to be a total of
$9,136,200.
$9,136,200 would be the total spend.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Anyone? We've heard quite a bit about it. Who?
I already had a second. Director Britton seconded it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Any questions? Any more? Call the vote, please.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Number two, request approval to purchase a wheelchair accessible van for community-based instruction for a total cost of $40,995.
Second.
Anyone have any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes. Facilities report, Vice President Britton.
Number one, request approval to provide a purchase order to Johnson Controls Incorporated under PA CoStars number 008-145 to furnish and install new chillers at Downingtown High School East and Downingtown High School West. Total cost $1,079,999. Second.
Any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Number two, request approval to provide a purchase order to Michael Johnson Architect to create the bid specifications and design documents for the roof restoration at the STEM Academy. Total cost $14,950. Second.
Any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes. Technology report, Director Crane.
Thank you, President Bertoni. Item number one, request approval to purchase 1,250 laptops for grade 9 students. Total cost not to exceed $1,180,000.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Item number two, request approval to purchase 3,000 iPads, 32 gigs for grades K through 2 students. Total cost not to exceed $917,000.
Second.
Anybody have any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Crane?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Blust?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Item number 3, request approval to purchase 1,200 iPads for grade 6 students, total cost not to exceed $473,000.
Second.
Any questions?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Can we have a reminder why the iPads are chosen for the 6th grade students and not the Chromebooks?
Dr. Matei?
Absolutely. We are inserting devices at their normal end of life, so that the 5th grade iPads were due to be replaced. So that will be the insertion point. That was the recommendation for the committee. So for next year, we're purchasing Chromebooks for 5th grade, iPads for 6th. Then we will stop buying for 6th grade. The insertion point for that 4-year device will be 5th grade, and they'll keep that for 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th. We're growing that deployment slowly and carefully, 1 year at a time.
Thank you.
Any other questions? That enables you to staff develop also, correct?
Yes, which is a very important part of that deployment.
I think the other important point of that, if I might say, Dr. Matei, is that the 5th grade are getting conversant with the device before they get into Marsh Creek. And so they're able to deal with their academics better at the secondary level.
That's an excellent point.
Excellent point.
Call the vote, please.
Director Blost?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crean?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Item 4, request approval to purchase 4,200 iPad cases, including accidental damage protection. Total cost not to exceed $248,000.
Second.
Questions? Call the vote, please.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Blost?
Yes.
Director Crean?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Item 5, request approval to purchase 1,250 Chromebooks for grade 5 students, total cost not to exceed $570,000.
Second.
Questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Blost?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Crean?
Yes.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
Item 6, request approval to purchase 85 laptops for teachers, total cost not to exceed $75,000.
Second.
Any questions? Call the vote, please.
Director Grab?
Yes.
Director Crean?
Yes.
Director McNeil?
Yes.
Director Houghton?
Yes.
Director Wisdom?
Yes.
Director Blost?
Yes.
Vice President Britton?
Yes.
Director Gibson?
Yes.
President Bertoni?
Yes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you. So now, any items that require the attention of the board, we were talking about doing a second survey for our parents and to see how the year is going, you know, with the different devices, what's working, what could be better, what's not working at all. And I heard tonight a number of comments about DCA probably needing different questions than brick and mortar. And I have to apologize, I have not had a lot of time to go through these questions. So I guess my ask of the board is, would you like to discuss it tonight? Or we are looking at planning a discussion about Dr. Lenardi and her goals. Do we want to have a separate meeting?
President Bertoni, may I ask a clarifying question? What
Sure.
is the purpose of these questions? Like,
Well,
what are we
that's-
looking to find out?
That's why I think it's a longer
Okay.
conversation. Initially, there was some talk of a survey to see where parents were at, to consider what choices we might like to give our students. It has since, in my mind, morphed into more let's get down to the nitty-gritty of what's worked, what hasn't worked, what would be helpful for next year. If we were ever to have anything like this happen again, maybe we can avoid some of the pitfalls we had.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
In my mind, the questions that were started were with a different intent, right?
Correct.
The intent was to get
Right.
as many kids back into the building. Well, how we were going to reach it.
Right, exactly. So,
But I think what I heard President Bertoni say and what I concur with is that I'd like to look forward into next year if possible, if there's interest. How are we going to make sure that kids, no matter which instruction model they choose, have what they need to be successful? So-
right. And, you know, I'd like to know from administration what data they could use that would be helpful. So I think it's more than a 15-minute conversation tonight. And that's why I hesitate starting it, although it's the pleasure of the board. If you would like to start the conversation tonight, we can start it, or we could look to try and put it at a different time. Anyone have a strong feeling? I'll just go around the room. Director Wisdom?
I think we could wait a little while, not too long, but
No.
maybe not tonight.
Right. Dr. McNeil?
Yeah, I'm looking at these questions and I'm hearing what Vice President
Right,
Britton
it
said.
was-
These questions don't appear to be to make next year better.
Right, right.
So
You're okay with?
with putting it off, yes.
Okay. Vice President Britton?
I'd like for the administration to come up with a plan for how to do those things.
Okay,
I'm okay with putting that off.
okay. Director Bless?
I think we need different questions. I think we need to think in terms of what it is we really want to find out and ask the appropriate questions.
So are you okay with not doing that
I am
tonight?
okay with not doing it tonight.
Thank you. Yes. Director Hunt?
I agree. I feel like we need to revise the questions at this point.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Do we have any visitors' comments?
They're shaking his head.
The following policies are submitted for public review and scheduled for approval on April 14th. In accordance with Act 93 of 1998, the Board of School Directors met on the following dates in executive session to discuss items in one or more of the following areas: personnel, litigation, legal matters, confidential information, labor relations, school security, real estate or land acquisition. February 16th, February 23rd, March 3rd, March 10th. The next committee of the whole meeting is scheduled for April 7th, starting at 6:30. The next regular school board meeting is scheduled for April 14th, starting at 6:30, both here in the James E. Watson Staff Development Room. Dr. Lenardi, the enrollment report?
Yes, as of March 1, 2021, our enrollment was 12,965 students. That is an increase from Feb 1, 2021 of 10 students and a decrease from March 2, 2020 of 139 students. That completes my report.
Thank you, Dr. Lenardi. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.